Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one. What if I told you that the most magnetic people in the room aren't the loudest, richest, or most attractive, but the ones who barely try, yet somehow draw respect, curiosity, and admiration wherever they go? You've seen them. They don't chase validation. They don't beg for attention. And still, people lean in. In a world obsessed with external approval, Stoicism offers a powerful shortcut. Master yourself, and the world responds. Attraction, influence, and confidence aren't built by impressing others. They're built by embodying a few timeless traits that silently signal strength, discipline, and self-respect. In this video, I'm going to break down just 9 Stoic traits that, when practiced consistently, change the way people perceive you, without manipulation, without pretending, without saying more than necessary. These traits don't just make you attractive, they make you unshakable. And here's the important part. Each trait builds on the previous one. If you skip ahead, you miss the transformation. But if you stay until the very end, you'll walk away with a mindset shift that most people never achieve, and that alone sets you apart. So slow down, focus, watch this till the end. Because once you understand these traits, you won't need to attract anyone anymore. They'll come to you. Number 1, self-control. Self-control is the quiet force that changes everything about how you move through the world. Not loudly, not dramatically, but steadily like gravity. The Stoics didn't see self-control as repression or stiffness. They saw it as freedom. Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." Read that again. Freedom doesn't begin with getting what you want. It begins with not being ruled by impulses, moods, urges, or the need for approval. And the moment you start practicing that kind of mastery, people feel it. You don't announce it. You don't explain it. It's sensed. When you have self-control, you stop leaking energy. You stop reacting to everything. You stop being pulled in 10 directions by distractions, desires, and emotional spikes. Most people live in reaction mode, reacting to boredom, reacting to temptation, reacting to discomfort. You don't have to. Stoicism teaches that you always have a choice between stimulus and response. Remind it himself daily. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. That power is self-control in its form, and strength like that is deeply attractive because it signals stability, calm, reliability, depth. Here's the truth you might not want to hear but need to. Every time you give in too easily, you weaken your presence. Every time you delay gratification, even in small ways, you sharpen it. Self-control isn't built in heroic moments. It's built in quiet decisions no one applauds, choosing not to speak when your ego wants to, choosing to stay focused when your mind wants escape, choosing discipline over comfort. Over time, these choices change how you carry yourself. Your posture shifts, your eyes steady. Your words become fewer but heavier. People listen more closely when you speak, because you're no longer desperate to fill silence. Stoicism asks you to train yourself the way an athlete trains their body. Slowly, intentionally, with patience. Seneca wrote, "The first step towards self-control is moderation." Not extremes, not punishment, moderation. You don't need to eliminate desire, you need to govern it. Desire is like fire. Uncontrolled, it burns everything. Contained, it warms and fuels. The goal isn't to feel nothing. The goal is to not be owned by what you feel. When you master this, you stop broadcasting neediness. You stop chasing reactions. And attraction flows naturally toward you because you're no longer chasing it. If you want to practice self-control in a real, practical way, start with your attention. That's where everything begins. Attention is the currency of your life. Wherever it goes, your energy follows. Decide deliberately where you place it. When your mind wanders, bring it back, again and again, not with frustration but with firmness. This is a daily exercise. Each time you notice an impulse, check, scroll, distract, react, pause for 3 breaths. just 3. That pause is power. That pause is you saying, I decide. Do this often enough and you'll feel a subtle shift. You'll feel less rushed, less scattered, more solid. Another Stoic exercise is voluntary discomfort. Not because suffering is noble, but because comfort weakens your ability to choose. When you always do what feels good, your will becomes fragile. Seneca believed in occasionally denying himself pleasures to remind his mind who was in charge. You can do the same in simple ways. Delay gratification on purpose. Sit with discomfort without trying to escape it. Let urges rise and fall without obeying them. Urges always peak and pass. Always. When you see that for yourself, something clicks. You realize you're stronger than you thought. Self-control also shows up in how you speak. Not every thought deserves a voice. Not every emotion needs expression. The Stoics valued restraint in speech because words reveal inner order or chaos. Before you speak, ask yourself, is this necessary? Is it true? Is it aligned with who I'm trying to become? Silence, when chosen, is not weakness. It's command. People feel safe around someone who isn't emotionally volatile, who doesn't overshare, who doesn't explode or plead for attention. Calm is contagious and rare. You'll notice something else as your self-control deepens. You stop trying to impress. You stop performing. You stop bending yourself into shapes to be liked. That's because self-control builds self-respect, and self-respect is magnetic. Wrote, respect yourself enough to walk away from anything that no longer serves you. That includes habits, thoughts, and behaviors that drain you. When you respect yourself, others follow your lead, not because you demand it, but because your energy sets a standard. This is important. Self-control is not about becoming rigid or cold. It's about becoming intentional. You still feel joy. You still feel desire. You still feel passion. But now you're steering instead of drifting. You decide when to engage and when to withdraw. You decide what deserves your effort. That clarity makes your presence grounded. People trust grounded individuals. They're drawn to them instinctively. To strengthen this trait daily, end each day with a brief review. The Stoics did this. Ask yourself, where did I act with control today? Where did I give it away? No judgment, just awareness. Awareness precedes change. Over time, patterns emerge. And once you see them, you can interrupt them. This is how self-mastery is built, one honest reflection at a time. Remember, attraction isn't something you force. It's something you embody. When you have self-control, you radiate a quiet confidence that doesn't beg to be noticed. It simply is. And in a world full of noise, impulsiveness, and emotional excess, that kind of steadiness stands out more than any clever words ever could. Number 2, emotional discipline. Emotional discipline is not about suppressing what you feel or turning yourself into something cold and unreachable. The Stoics never taught that. Reminded himself, do not be carried away by the impression, but say to it, you are an impression and not at all the thing you appear to be. That single line captures the essence of emotional discipline. You still feel everything, but you don't let every feeling drag you around by the collar. You stop reacting on impulse and start responding with intention. And the moment you do that, something shifts. Your presence steadies. Your words land differently. People sense that you are not ruled by every emotional wave, and that alone makes you magnetic. Most people live emotionally undisciplined lives without realizing it. They react instantly. They explain themselves too much. They get defensive, excited, discouraged, hopeful, angry, all within the same hour. There's nothing mysterious about why that energy repels rather than attracts. Emotional discipline is attractive because it signals self-mastery. Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." When you practice emotional discipline, you are silently communicating that you are grounded, self-contained, and not easily shaken. You become someone others feel safe around, curious about, and drawn toward, even if they can't explain why. This discipline begins with awareness. You don't jump into control, you step into observation. When an emotion arises, you notice it before you act on it. You feel irritation, excitement, longing, disappointment, but you pause, just a breath, just a moment. That pause is everything. In that space, you reclaim choice. Seneca wrote, "The greatest power is to be able to pause." Emotional discipline lives in that pause. You stop letting emotions dictate your tone, your posture, your decisions. You don't deny them, but you also don't hand them the steering wheel. As you practice this, your inner world becomes quieter. Not empty, quieter. You stop rehearsing arguments that never happen. You stop replaying imagined outcomes. You stop leaking emotional energy in every direction. And when your inner world settles, your outer presence becomes heavier, calmer, more assured. People feel it immediately. Emotional discipline gives you a kind of gravity. You don't chase reactions. You don't seek emotional reassurance. You stand firm, and others adjust themselves around you. There's a powerful Stoic idea that emotions are not commands, they're signals. Wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." When you adopt this mindset, you stop blaming others for how you feel. You stop outsourcing your emotional state. You understand that while you can't control what happens, you can always control your interpretation. That understanding alone changes how you show up in every interaction. You become less reactive, less needy, less volatile, and paradoxically more attractive. To build emotional discipline, you need to train your inner reflexes. One practical exercise is daily emotional labeling. When a feeling arises, silently name it without judgment. Not a story, not an explanation, just the word frustration, anticipation, doubt, calm. This simple act creates distance between you and the emotion. It reminds you that you are the observer, not the emotion itself. Over time, this weakens impulsive reactions and strengthens clarity. You don't eliminate emotion. You refine your relationship with it. Another practice is voluntary restraint. Choose intentionally not to express every emotion you feel, not because it's wrong to feel it, but because not every feeling deserves expression. Seneca warned, "Anger, if not restrained, is often more hurtful to us than the injury that provokes it." Restraint builds inner muscle. You learn that silence can be strength, that calm can be louder than reaction. This doesn't make you passive, it makes you precise. When you do speak or act, it carries weight because it's chosen, not compulsive. Emotional discipline also changes how you handle desire and attachment. Instead of clinging, you hold lightly. Instead of craving outcomes, you focus on conduct. Epictetus taught, "Do not seek for things to happen the way you want, but wish for them to happen as they do." When you internalize this, you stop projecting emotional pressure outward. You stop needing others to validate your inner state. That independence is deeply attractive. It signals abundance of character, not scarcity of attention. You'll notice that emotionally disciplined people don't rush. They don't fill silence out of discomfort. They are comfortable waiting, listening, letting moments breathe. You can practice this by slowing your responses intentionally. When you're about to react, count to 3 internally. Let your body settle. Let your mind catch up. This small delay trains you to respond from choice rather than habit. Over time, your emotional baseline stabilizes. You become harder to provoke and easier to respect. The Stoics also believed in rehearsing adversity, not to become pessimistic, but resilient. You can practice this mentally by imagining emotional challenges and calmly walking yourself through them without drama. Not fantasizing. Just acknowledging that discomfort is part of life and that you are capable of meeting it with composure. Reminded himself, the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Emotional discipline turns obstacles into training grounds. What's powerful is that none of this requires changing who you are at your core. You're not becoming someone else. You're stripping away emotional noise that never belonged to you in the first place. As discipline grows, authenticity deepens. You act in alignment with your values rather than your moods. People sense that consistency. They trust it. They're drawn to it. In the end, emotional discipline is quiet confidence. It's the ability to feel deeply without being destabilized, to care without clinging, to remain open without being reactive. When you cultivate it, attraction stops being something you chase. It becomes something that happens naturally as a byproduct of inner order, or as put it, waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one. Number 3, inner calm. Inner calm isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't rush to prove anything. And that's exactly why it attracts. When you cultivate inner calm, you stop leaking nervous energy into the world. You stop trying to control outcomes, people, reactions. You stand still inside yourself, and paradoxically, that stillness pulls others toward you. Wrote, "Nowhere can a man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul." Most people never visit that place. You decide to live there, and that decision changes how you're perceived before you even speak. You feel this when you slow your inner pace. Not your body, not your schedule, your thoughts. Inner calm begins the moment you stop arguing with reality. The Stoics were relentless about this. Epictetus reminded you that it's not things that upset us, but our judgments about things. When you internalize that, you stop reacting impulsively. You don't get pulled into emotional turbulence. You don't mirror chaos back to the world. You become grounded, and grounded people feel safe to be around. They feel rare. They feel trustworthy. Attraction grows quietly in that space. Most people live internally cluttered lives. Their minds are noisy, anxious, constantly scanning for approval or threat. You don't have to live that way. Inner calm is trained. It's built through repeated refusal to panic, through choosing response over reaction, through letting thoughts pass instead of grabbing onto them. When you practice this daily, your presence changes. Your silence gains weight. Your words become deliberate. You stop oversharing. You stop filling space just to ease discomfort. You realize you don't need to be impressive to be compelling. Calm becomes your signature. Seneca said, "A man who suffers before it is necessary suffers more than is necessary." Read that again. Inner calm grows when you stop pre-living problems, when you stop rehearsing future failures, when you stay anchored in the present moment where things are almost always manageable. You don't deny difficulty, you just refuse to dramatize it internally. That restraint gives you emotional efficiency. Others feel it. They sense that you won't collapse under pressure, that you won't demand emotional regulation from them. That's magnetic. To build this, you must train your nervous system. Start with a simple daily practice. Sit still for 5 minutes without distraction. No phone, no music, just you and your breath. When thoughts arise, don't fight them, don't follow them either. Let them pass like clouds. This is not relaxation, it's discipline. You're teaching yourself that you don't have to obey every impulse. Over time, this creates space between stimulus and response. That space is inner calm. That space is power. Another exercise, practice emotional delay. When something triggers you internally, don't act on it immediately. Count 10 slow breaths. Ask yourself, is this within my control? If it's not, release it. If it is, act deliberately. This is Stoicism in motion. This is how you stop bleeding urgency into your behavior. Urgency repels, calm attracts. You'll notice that as your inner calm grows, your need for validation shrinks. You stop fishing for reassurance. You stop trying to be liked. You stop bending your values for approval. Epictetus was blunt. If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. Inner calm means you're no longer emotionally hostage to opinions. That independence is deeply attractive. People feel it instantly. They may not be able to name it, but they sense it. Inner calm also sharpens your boundaries. You don't overextend, you don't chase, you don't cling, you allow things to unfold. That doesn't mean passivity, it means confidence in timing, confidence in yourself. When you move from this place, your actions feel clean, unforced, intentional. You're not trying to get somewhere emotionally. You're already there. Train this further by practicing voluntary discomfort, cold water on your face, sitting with silence, resisting the urge to check notifications. These small acts strengthen your capacity to remain composed under stress. Practice this intentionally, reminding himself that he didn't need excess to function well. You don't either. Every time you choose calm over comfort, you expand your internal stability. There will be moments when your calm is tested. That's the point. Inner calm isn't fragile, it's forged. When emotions rise, don't suppress them. Observe them, name them internally. Let them peak and fall. This builds emotional self-trust. You realize you can experience intensity without losing control. That realization alone changes how you carry yourself. Your posture softens, your gaze steadies, your energy slows down, attraction follows naturally. Make it a habit to end each day with reflection. Ask yourself where you reacted unnecessarily, where you stayed composed, not with judgment but with curiosity. Seneca often reflected nightly, reviewing his conduct. This builds awareness. Awareness builds choice. Choice builds calm. Inner calm isn't about being detached from life. It's about being deeply rooted within it. When you stop needing the world to behave a certain way for you to feel okay, you become free. And freedom is felt. It's felt in your pauses, your restraint, your steadiness. People are drawn to what feels solid. Become that. Start today. Slow your inner tempo. Breathe when you want to rush. Pause when you want to react. Choose presence over performance. Over time, inner calm won't be something you practice, it will be who you are. And without trying, without forcing, you'll notice something shift. People listen more closely. They lean in. They feel something different around you. That's the quiet pull of inner calm. Number 4, confidence without arrogance. Confidence without arrogance is one of those quiet forces that changes how people feel around you before they can even explain why. You don't announce it. You don't perform it. You simply are. And that difference matters more than you've probably been told. The Stoics understood this deeply. Epictetus warned, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. That line alone dismantles arrogance at its root. Arrogance needs applause. Confidence doesn't. Confidence is what remains when you no longer need to be seen as impressive, only grounded. You can feel the shift when you stop trying to convince others of your value and start acting from the assumption that it's already there. Your voice slows. Your movements become economical. Your words carry weight because you don't flood the space with them. You're not rushing to prove intelligence, strength, or charm. You trust that what needs to be said will be said, and what doesn't won't. Wrote, never value the admiration of people who do not admire themselves. Read that again. Arrogance is built on borrowed approval. Confidence is self-generated. One depends on others, the other depends on discipline. Most people mistake confidence for dominance, volume, or bravado, but those are often masks for insecurity. Real confidence is calm. It doesn't posture, it doesn't interrupt. It listens without shrinking and speaks without aggression. You don't need to correct everyone. You don't need to win every exchange. You don't need to be right out loud. You let silence do some of the work. Seneca said, "He who knows himself does not despise another." When you're secure, comparison fades. And when comparison fades, arrogance has nothing left to feed on. This is where attraction quietly begins. Not because you're trying to attract, but because you're not grasping. People feel safe around someone who isn't desperate for validation. They sense stability. They sense self-trust. You're not scanning the room for approval. You're not adjusting yourself to be liked. You're rooted. And rooted people don't chase, others naturally orbit them. That's not strategy, that's presence. To build this kind of confidence, you have to stop outsourcing your self-worth. Every time you look to others to confirm who you are, you weaken the foundation. The Stoics practiced internal validation relentlessly. Epictetus reminded his students that external praise is outside your control, and therefore irrelevant to your peace. You can apply this immediately. When you feel the urge to explain yourself, pause. When you feel the impulse to prove something, wait. Ask yourself, if no one noticed this, would I still stand by it? That question alone burns away arrogance and strengthens confidence. Here's a simple exercise. For one full day, remove unnecessary self-promotion from your speech. Don't downplay yourself, but don't embellish either. State things plainly. Let your actions speak internally first. Notice the discomfort. That discomfort is arrogance starving. Sit with it. Another practice. Intentionally allow others to misunderstand you without rushing to clarify. Not because you're passive, but because you don't need immediate agreement to feel whole. Advised, be indifferent to what makes no difference. Misinterpretation often makes no difference, unless your ego demands repair. Confidence without arrogance also changes how you handle disagreement. You don't collapse and you don't attack, you stay steady. You can say, I may be wrong without shrinking. You can say, I disagree without hostility. That balance is rare, and rarity attracts, not because it's flashy, but because it's trustworthy. People sense when someone isn't ruled by reactivity. They feel it in your packing, your eye contact, your restraint. Another exercise, practice voluntary humility. Not humiliation, humility. Choose the lower position in your own mind. Seneca encouraged this as a form of strength training for the soul. When you stop needing to be elevated, you paradoxically rise. Try this daily. Remind yourself that your value isn't increased by praise or reduced by silence. Say it internally until it settles. Then move through the world as if that truth were unshakable. Confidence without arrogance is not about thinking you're superior. It's about refusing to believe you're inferior. It's the middle path. The Stoics walked it deliberately. You can too. Strip away the need to impress. Replace it with the commitment to act with integrity whether anyone is watching or not. Over time, your presence will change. People will feel it. You won't need to announce it. And that quiet certainty, the kind that doesn't beg, boast, or bend, is what draws people in without effort, without force, and without noise. Number 5, purposeful silence. Purposeful silence is not the absence of words, it's the presence of control. The Stoics understood this deeply. Epictetus warned, we have 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we can listen twice as much as we speak. When you rush to fill every gap with noise, you give away something valuable, your center. Silence, when chosen deliberately, pulls that center back into you. It steadies you. It tells the world that you are not anxious to be seen, not desperate to be heard, not afraid of space. And that calm, that restraint, is felt instantly by others, even if they can't explain why. You don't need to announce yourself to matter. You don't need constant commentary to prove intelligence, wit, or relevance. In fact, the more you speak without intention, the more you dilute your presence. Purposeful silence works the opposite way. It concentrates you. It makes every word you do speak land with weight. Reminded himself, let your speech be better than silence or be silent. Read that again. Not louder, not smarter, better. Silence becomes your filter. It keeps you from reacting emotionally, from performing for approval. And when you stop performing, attraction changes direction. People begin leaning toward you instead of you leaning toward them. This kind of silence is rooted in self-mastery. You pause not because you lack something to say, but because you choose not to say everything. That pause gives you power over impulse. It separates reaction from response. Most people speak to discharge tension. You learn to hold it. You let thoughts settle before they escape your mouth. That alone changes how you're perceived. Calm replaces urgency. Groundedness replaces need. And without trying, you project authority over yourself, which is the only authority that truly matters. There's also something deeply attractive about someone who is comfortable with quiet. Silence exposes insecurity quickly. Many people talk because they're afraid of being forgotten in the gap. When you don't share that fear, it shows. Seneca wrote, "Silence is a lesson learned from the many sufferings of life." Silence teaches patience. It teaches you that you don't need to win every moment. You don't need to dominate space to occupy it fully. You begin to understand that presence is not measured in decibels, but in depth. Purposeful silence also sharpens your awareness. When you stop rushing to speak, you start noticing more. Your own internal reactions, the emotional currents in the room, the unspoken signals others broadcast without knowing. You become harder to manipulate because you're not broadcasting your inner state constantly. You don't give away leverage. This is why silence has always been associated with strength. Not brute strength, inner strength. The kind that doesn't announce itself but is felt. Now, this doesn't mean withdrawing or becoming cold. Stoic silence is warm, grounded, and intentional. It's a silence that listens, a silence that observes, a silence that allows others to reveal themselves fully. When you stop interrupting the flow with unnecessary words, people often say more than they intend. You don't need to probe, you don't need to chase. You simply allow space. And space has a strange effect on people. It invites projection, curiosity, and respect. If you want to cultivate this trait, start small. Begin with pauses. When you feel the urge to respond immediately, don't. Take a breath. Count silently. Let the moment settle. Ask yourself, is what I'm about to say useful, necessary, and aligned with who I want to be? If the answer is no, stay quiet. This isn't suppression, it's selection. You're choosing quality over quantity. Another exercise is deliberate restraint. For a set period each day, decide to speak less than usual, not in a forced or awkward way, but with awareness. Notice how often words want to escape simply to fill space. Let them pass. You'll feel discomfort at first. That's normal. Discomfort is the signal that you're breaking a habit. Stay with it. Over time, that discomfort turns into composure. You can also practice silent reflection. At the end of the day, review your conversations mentally. Where did silence serve you? Where did unnecessary speech weaken your position or drain your energy? Use this kind of nightly reflection to refine his character. You can do the same. This isn't about guilt. It's about calibration. Each day, you become slightly more intentional. Purposeful silence aligns you with the Stoic idea of focusing only on what's within your control. You can't control how others interpret your words, but you can control whether you speak at all. That choice alone reduces friction in your life. Fewer regrets, fewer explanations, fewer moments where you wish you had held back. Silence becomes a form of discipline, and discipline becomes freedom. Over time, you'll notice a shift. People listen more closely when you do speak. Your words feel considered, not scattered. You're no longer chasing moments, you're anchoring them. And the most important shift happens internally. You stop needing external validation to feel solid. You don't rush to prove intelligence or value. You know who you are without narrating it. Remember what Seneca said, "True happiness is to enjoy the present without anxious dependence upon the future." Purposeful silence keeps you rooted in the present. You're not scrambling for the next line, the next impression, the next reaction. You're here, fully, calmly, intentionally. So practice it, protect it. Use silence not as a shield, but as a foundation. Let it shape your presence, refine your speech, and strengthen your self-command. When you master purposeful silence, you don't just attract others, you attract yourself back to center. And from that center, everything else flows naturally. Number 6, consistency in actions. Consistency in actions is one of those quiet forces that reshapes how people feel around you long before they understand why. You don't announce it. You don't explain it. You simply live it. And over time, it becomes impossible to ignore. The Stoics understood this deeply. Epictetus warned, "Don't explain your philosophy, embody it." That single line carries more weight than most people realize. When your actions line up day after day, when your behavior doesn't fluctuate with mood, pressure, or the need for approval, you begin to feel solid, predictable in the best way, grounded. People sense that stability instantly, and the human mind is naturally drawn toward what feels steady and trustworthy. You don't need to be intense. You don't need to be dramatic. What you need is alignment. Consistency is what happens when your inner principles quietly dictate your outer behavior. You say less because you don't need to convince. You promise less because you intend to deliver everything you commit to. Wrote, waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one. That's consistency in its form, not bursts of effort followed by long absences. Not motivation that fades as soon as things get uncomfortable. Just a steady rhythm of action that doesn't depend on external reward. Most people underestimate how rare this is. Many start strong and fade quietly. Others change direction every time emotion spikes. When your actions remain calm and repeatable, even when no one is watching, you signal self-mastery. And self-mastery is magnetic. It tells the world you can be relied upon, not because you say so, but because your behavior has proven it again and again. Attraction grows in environments where the nervous system can relax, and consistency creates that environment without effort. You build this trait the same way Stoics built character, through daily, intentional practice, not perfection, not intensity, repetition. Seneca reminded us, it is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it. Consistency is the refusal to waste your own potential by starting over endlessly. You show up in the same way with the same values, whether the day feels heavy or light. That reliability becomes part of your presence. People don't have to guess who you are today. And that certainty is rare comfort. Here, where you take action, choose one small behavior that aligns with the person you want to become and commit to it daily. Not when it's convenient, daily. Keep it almost laughably simple so your mind can't negotiate its way out. Then track it privately. No announcements, no validation, just quiet execution. This trains your nervous system to trust yourself. And once you trust yourself, others feel it instinctively. Another practice the Stoics used was evening reflection. Did this relentlessly. At the end of the day, ask yourself 3 questions. Did my actions match my values today? Where did I drift? Where did I hold firm? No shame, no emotional punishment, just observation. Consistency grows through awareness, not self-criticism. When you calmly notice your patterns, you gain the power to refine them. Understand this, attraction is not created by grand gestures, it's created by patterns. People don't fall for moments, they respond to signals repeated over time. When your words and actions move in the same direction consistently, you stop feeling scattered. You stop needing to prove. Your presence becomes clean, direct, undeniable. Epictetus also said, first say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. That's your blueprint. Decide who you are, then let your actions quietly reinforce that decision every day. Consistency turns identity into reality. And reality, when it's grounded and stable, draws people in without force. Stay patient with this process. Consistency compounds slowly, then suddenly. You won't feel magnetic overnight, but one day you'll notice that people listen more closely, trust more quickly, feel calmer around you. That's the signal working beneath the surface. You don't need to change everything at once. You need to stop changing who you are depending on circumstances. Choose your standards. Live them repeatedly. Let your actions speak in a language no one can argue with. This is how consistency becomes not just a habit, but a presence that attracts effortlessly. Number 7, detachment from validation. Detachment from validation is one of those ideas that sounds simple until you actually try to live it. You've been conditioned, subtly and constantly, to look outward for approval. A nod, a compliment, a message, a reaction. Somewhere along the way, you were taught that being liked is safety, that being praised is progress, that being noticed is proof you matter. Stoicism steps in and quietly says something radical. You don't need any of that to stand firm. Epictetus put it plainly: if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. Read that again. He wasn't saying seek rejection. He was saying stop outsourcing your worth. The moment you stop asking the world for permission to be yourself, something in you settles. Your nervous system exhales. You move slower. You speak less but with more weight. And people feel that before they understand it. When you detach from validation, you stop performing. You're no longer adjusting your words to be liked or shaping your behavior to avoid disapproval. You're not scanning faces for reactions or replaying conversations in your head. You act from principle, not applause. Reminded himself, I do what is mine to do, the rest does not disturb me. That's not emotional coldness. That's emotional sovereignty. When your actions come from your values instead of the crowd's mood, you become consistent. Predictable in character, not behavior. And consistency is deeply attractive because it signals inner order. Chaos seeks order instinctively. People lean toward those who are self-contained. Detachment doesn't mean you reject connection. It means you don't beg for it. You stop trying to be chosen and start choosing yourself. That shift alone changes your posture, your tone, your timing. You're no longer rushing to fill silence or over-explaining to be understood. You're comfortable letting things land, or not land at all. Seneca warned, he who is dependent on another man's approval has no peace. Think about how much mental energy you've spent wondering how you're perceived. Now imagine reclaiming that energy and redirecting it inward. Calm replaces urgency. Presence replaces anxiety. And presence is magnetic. There's a quiet confidence that forms when you no longer need external confirmation. You don't need to announce it. You don't need to defend it. You just live from it. This is why detachment from validation is not about arrogance. It's about groundedness. Arrogance still needs an audience. Groundedness doesn't. When you detach, compliments no longer inflate you and criticism no longer devastates you. Both pass through without sticking. You listen, you extract what's useful, and you discard the rest. That emotional resilience creates a sense of safety around you. People feel they don't have to manage your reactions. They don't have to tiptoe. And that freedom makes them want to stay. Stoicism teaches you to draw a hard line between what's in your control and what is. Other people's opinions will never be in your control, ever. The sooner you accept that, the lighter you become. Epictetus again. If someone succeeds in provoking you, realize that your mind is complicit in the provocation. Validation-seeking hands others the remote control to your emotions. Detachment takes it back. You respond instead of react. You decide instead of chase. And paradoxically, the less you need validation, the more naturally it arrives. Not because you're trying, but because you're no longer needy. Now let's make this practical. Start with a simple daily exercise. At the end of the day, ask yourself one question: did I act today to be approved or to be aligned? Don't judge the answer, just notice. Awareness is the first layer of freedom. Another practice: deliberately pause before seeking reassurance. When you feel the urge to explain yourself, to justify, to check for agreement, stop. Take one breath. Let the urge pass. You'll discover that most of the time, nothing bad happens. Silence doesn't kill you. Disapproval doesn't either. Each time you survive that pause, your dependence weakens. Train yourself to self-validate. That doesn't mean empty affirmations. It means setting standards and honoring them. Decide what matters to you. Decide how you behave when no one is watching. Then hold yourself to that. Wrote his meditations as reminders to himself, not for praise. Follow that example. Keep private promises. Build integrity quietly. When your self-respect grows, external validation loses its grip. You stop craving applause because you already know where you stand with yourself. Another exercise: imagine removing an invisible audience from your life. Do things as if no one is scoring you. Speak as if no one is keeping tally. Move as if no one is judging. This mental shift is powerful. It returns you to your own center. You become harder to manipulate and easier to trust. People sense when you're not trying to extract something from them. That absence of need creates space, and in that space, attraction naturally forms. Detachment from validation is a discipline. You won't master it overnight. Some days you'll slip back into old patterns, that's fine. Stoicism isn't about perfection, it's about progress. Seneca said, "As long as you live, keep learning how to live." Each moment is another chance to choose inner authority over external noise. Each choice strengthens the muscle. Over time, you'll notice a shift. You'll feel steadier, less reactive, more at ease in your own presence. And here's the quiet truth. When you no longer ask to be seen, you are seen. When you stop asking to be chosen, you are chosen. Not because you engineered it, but because you removed the very tension that repels connection. Detachment from validation doesn't make you distant, it makes you whole. And wholeness effortlessly draws people in. Number 8, mental resilience. Mental resilience is the quiet force people feel before they ever understand it. It's not loud. It doesn't announce itself, but it's unmistakable. You can sense it in someone who doesn't rush to explain themselves, who doesn't crumble when things don't go their way, who stays steady while everything around them feels unstable. And whether you realize it or not, this quality pulls people toward you because it signals safety, strength, and depth. The Stoics understood this deeply. Epictetus said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." That sentence alone contains the blueprint for attraction and influence. When you train your mind to remain composed, you stop broadcasting neediness, fear, and reactivity. You begin to project calm authority, and calm is rare. Calm is magnetic. You don't build mental resilience by pretending you don't feel things. You build it by refusing to be ruled by every passing emotion. Most people live at the mercy of their moods. A bad moment ruins their day. A small setback defines their week. A single comment shakes their confidence. When you decide to live differently, when you choose to pause instead of react, something shifts inside you. You create space between stimulus and response. In that space, you regain control. Wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." That strength is not aggressive. It's grounded, and people instinctively trust someone who trusts themselves. If you want to cultivate this trait, you must start by observing your inner dialogue, not judging it, watching it. Notice how quickly your mind dramatizes situations. Notice how often it seeks reassurance, approval, certainty. The Stoics believe that most suffering comes not from events, but from the stories we attach to them. Your first exercise is simple but uncomfortable. When something disturbs you, don't immediately fix it, escape it, or explain it. Sit with it. Breathe. Ask yourself, is this within my control? If it isn't, practice letting it pass without resistance. This single habit trains emotional endurance. Over time, your nervous system learns that not every discomfort is a threat. That calm response begins to show in your posture, your voice, your presence. Mental resilience also means becoming difficult to offend. Not because you're numb, but because your sense of self is no longer fragile. Seneca warned, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." When you stop taking everything personally, you reclaim enormous energy. You stop reacting to opinions that don't build you. You stop shrinking in rooms where others try to dominate through noise or drama. This doesn't make you passive, it makes you selective. And selectiveness is attractive because it signals self-respect. You don't chase every conversation. You don't defend every stance. You don't need to win every exchange. You know who you are, and that steadiness speaks louder than words. To strengthen this, practice voluntary discomfort. The Stoics regularly trained their minds by stepping outside comfort on purpose. not to punish themselves, but to remind their minds that they could endure more than they thought. Choose small challenges that test your patience, your impulse control, your emotional discipline. Delay gratification. Sit in silence. Resist the urge to react immediately. Each time you do this, you are teaching your mind that it doesn't need to panic. This creates a deep internal confidence that others can feel. You become someone who doesn't break under pressure, and that reliability draws people in. Mental resilience also shows up in how you handle uncertainty. Most people crave guarantees. They want reassurance before they move. They want certainty before they commit. But resilience allows you to act without knowing every outcome. You trust your ability to adapt. Epictetus reminded us, "Seek not for events to happen as you wish, but wish for events to happen as they do, and your life will go smoothly." When you embody this mindset, you stop fighting reality. You flow with it. And there is something deeply attractive about someone who isn't constantly resisting life, but meeting it with composure and quiet courage. Another powerful exercise is negative visualization. This may sound counterintuitive, but it builds immense mental strength. Briefly imagine things not going your way, not to scare yourself, but to normalize uncertainty. When your mind stops being shocked by the idea of loss or failure, it stops clinging so tightly. You become freer, lighter, less desperate. That freedom changes how you move through the world. People sense that you're not trying to extract something from them. You're not emotionally dependent on outcomes, and that independence creates space for genuine connection. Mental resilience also means being patient with your own growth. You don't rush transformation. You don't berate yourself for not being perfect yet. You understand that strength is built through repetition, not intensity. Advised, be tolerant with others and strict with yourself. That balance is crucial. You hold yourself to high standards internally, but you remain composed externally. You don't leak frustration. You don't lash out. You channel your energy inward, refining your character day by day. As you develop this trait, you'll notice a shift in how people respond to you. Conversations feel different. There's less tension, more curiosity, more respect. Not because you're trying to impress, but because your presence is grounded. You listen fully. You speak deliberately. You don't rush to fill silence. Silence no longer scares you. And silence, when owned, becomes powerful. End each day with reflection. This was a core Stoic practice. Ask yourself where you reacted emotionally instead of thoughtfully, where you gave your power away, where you held it. Don't shame yourself. Just observe and adjust. This daily check-in strengthens self-awareness, and self-awareness is the foundation of resilience. Over time, you'll find that fewer things shake you, and when your inner world becomes stable, your outer world responds. Mental resilience is not about becoming unfeeling. It's about becoming unshakable. When you master this trait, you don't just attract others. You attract opportunities, respect, and alignment. Because in a world full of emotional chaos, a steady mind is rare, and rarity is always attractive. Number 9, authenticity. Authenticity is not a performance. It's the absence of one. It's what's left when you stop editing yourself for approval and stop shrinking or exaggerating who you are just to be accepted. And here's the part most people miss. Authenticity isn't loud, it's steady. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't beg to be seen. It simply is. Put it plainly when he wrote, "Be yourself plain and simple, and don't worry about appearing consistent." That line alone dismantles the exhausting habit of trying to be everything for everyone. When you're authentic, you're not trying to win people over. You're giving them the rare experience of encountering someone who is at ease with himself. And that calm self-possession is deeply attractive. You don't become authentic by adding traits. You become authentic by removing the layers that don't belong to you, the forced opinions, the borrowed confidence, the rehearsed responses, the urge to agree just to keep the peace. Stoicism teaches you to live in accordance with your nature, not your impulses and not the crowd's expectations. Epictetus warned, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." That's authenticity in its form, the willingness to be misunderstood rather than self-betrayed. When you stop adjusting your inner compass to match external noise, something shifts. Your words carry more weight. Your silence feels intentional. Your presence feels grounded. People sense it before they can explain it. Most attraction is rooted in trust, and authenticity is the fastest way to signal it. Not because you overshare or reveal everything, but because your inner and outer worlds are aligned. There's no friction between what you think, what you say, and how you act. Seneca reminded us, the greatest obstacle to living is expectancy. The moment you stop expecting approval, attraction begins to happen naturally. When you're no longer scanning faces for validation, you start occupying space differently. You stand firmer. You listen without rehearsing your reply. You speak without second-guessing every word. That congruence is rare, and rarity is magnetic. You don't need to convince anyone of who you are. In fact, the more you try, the less authentic you become. Stoicism encourages you to focus on what's within your control, your values, your actions, your standards, and release what isn't, including how others interpret you. This detachment doesn't make you cold. It makes you clear. And clarity is attractive because it feels safe. When you're authentic, people don't feel manipulated or managed. They feel like they're dealing with something real, something solid, something unforced. There's also courage in authenticity. Quiet courage. The courage to say no without apology. The courage to pause before responding. The courage to admit uncertainty without collapsing into self-doubt. Wrote, "Never let the future disturb you. You will meet it if you have to, with the same weapons of reason which today arm you against the present." Authenticity grows when you trust yourself enough to meet the moment as you are, not as a carefully curated version of yourself. That trust in yourself radiates outward. Others feel it. They relax around it. They're drawn to it. If you want to cultivate authenticity, start with restraint. Practice not explaining yourself when no explanation is required. Practice letting a statement land without cushioning it. Practice sitting with your own thoughts instead of immediately sharing them. One simple exercise is this. Before you speak, ask yourself whether the words are meant to express truth or to manage perception. If it's the latter, pause. Silence often preserves authenticity better than speech. Another exercise is alignment. At the end of the day, reflect briefly on where your actions matched your values and where they didn't. No judgment, just awareness. Authenticity grows through noticing, not through self-punishment. You also strengthen authenticity by choosing principle over impulse. Stoicism doesn't ask you to suppress who you are, it asks you to refine it. Epictetus said, "First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do." When your behavior follows your values instead of your moods, people experience you as dependable, grounded, and real. You don't sway with every reaction. You don't chase every emotional high. You become predictable in the best way, steady. That steadiness is attractive because it signals maturity and inner order. There will be moments when authenticity costs you. Approval may drop, attention may fade, but what replaces it is far more powerful: self-respect. And self-respect changes how you move through the world. You don't rush, you don't overextend, you don't abandon yourself to be liked. You show up whole. Seneca wrote, "He who is brave is free." Authenticity is freedom. Freedom from pretending, freedom from performing, freedom from the exhausting need to be someone else. Make authenticity a daily discipline. Wake up and commit to one small act of alignment, one decision that reflects who you truly are rather than who you're trying to impress. Notice how your body feels when you act from truth instead of fear. That feeling is your guide. Over time, this practice compounds. Your confidence stops being something you project and becomes something you inhabit. Attraction stops being something you chase and becomes something you allow. When you live authentically, you don't attract everyone, and that's the point. You attract the right people, the ones who resonate with your frequency, not your mask. Stoicism never promised universal approval. It promised inner peace. And paradoxically, that peace is what makes you compelling. Be real, be aligned, be unmoved by the need to be liked. In doing so, you become unforgettable. Attraction isn't about chasing attention. It's about becoming someone who doesn't need it. When you embody these 9 traits, you stop trying to impress, and people start noticing. Not because you demand their focus, but because your presence feels rare in a noisy world. So take these principles with you. Practice them quietly. Let your character speak before your words ever do. And remember, true power isn't loud, desperate, or flashy. It's calm, it's disciplined, it's unshakable. If this message resonated with you, stay on this path. Because when you master yourself, you naturally attract everything else. If you seek truth, seek it for yourself, not from the crowd. Epictetus. What if I told you that the lack of friends in your life is not a weakness, but a powerful signal? A signal most people misunderstand. In a world that glorifies popularity, constant messages, and endless social circles, being alone is often seen as something to fix. But Stoic philosophy tells a very different story, one that might completely change how you see yourself. Have you ever noticed that the more you grow, the fewer people truly understand you? That the deeper your thoughts become, the quieter your social life gets? This isn't accidental. It's a pattern that has followed thinkers, leaders, and philosophers for centuries. The Stoics believe that solitude isn't emptiness, it's space. Space to think clearly, to build inner strength, and to live according to your own values rather than borrowed opinions. In this video, you'll discover why having fewer friends may actually mean you're developing independence, wisdom, and emotional control, qualities most people spend their entire lives chasing without success. But there's a hidden danger too, one that only awareness can protect you from. So stay with me until the very end, because the final lesson may completely reframe how you experience loneliness and turn it into one of your greatest advantages. Number 1, you value depth over noise. When you value depth over noise, it doesn't mean something is missing in you. It means something unnecessary has fallen away. The world keeps insisting that more connections equal more meaning, more voices equal more truth, more interaction equals more life. But you feel the tension in that lie. You sense that constant chatter dulls the mind and fragments the soul. So you step back, not out of fear, not out of bitterness, but out of discernment. Warned, beware of dissipating your thoughts, keep them concentrated. You're not avoiding people, you're protecting your inner clarity. You'd rather have fewer exchanges that sharpen you than endless ones that leave you restless and scattered. That preference is not weakness, it's discipline. Depth asks something of you. It demands attention, patience, and the courage to sit with your own thoughts without immediately numbing them. Noise, on the other hand, asks nothing. It's cheap, loud, and endlessly available, and you already know which one strengthens you. Seneca wrote that being everywhere is being nowhere. When you choose depth, you're choosing to be fully present with what actually matters, your values, your inner dialogue, your direction. This is where Stoicism quietly aligns with your instinct. The Stoics didn't glorify crowds. They glorified clarity. They believed that a calm, ordered mind was worth more than approval, applause, or constant company. You feel that truth, even if you've never named it before. But here's the challenge. Valuing depth means resisting the impulse to fill silence just to prove you belong. It means not reaching for distraction the moment discomfort shows up, and that takes strength. Epictetus said, "First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do." If you want to be grounded, you must act grounded. That means practicing restraint with your attention. Not every thought needs to be shared. Not every moment needs to be documented. Not every invitation needs a yes. Each time you choose stillness over stimulation, you train your mind to go deeper instead of wider, and depth compounds. You may notice that your standards quietly rise. Surface-level interaction begins to feel exhausting. Fast opinions, shallow humor, performative emotion, they no longer feed you. This doesn't make you cold, it makes you selective. And selectivity is a form of self-respect. Stoicism teaches that your energy is finite. Where you spend it shapes who you become. So if you spend it on noise, you become noisy inside. But if you invest it in reflection, learning, and inner order, you become solid. Unshakable. The kind of person who doesn't need constant validation because they are already aligned within. Now comes the important part. Depth is not passive. It's not hiding. It's an active practice. You must train it deliberately. Start by creating daily space where nothing competes for your attention. No background input, no idle scrolling, just you and your thoughts. Sit with them, observe them. Did this through journaling, not to impress anyone but to refine his character. You can do the same. Ask yourself simple but demanding questions. What am I avoiding by staying busy? What thoughts keep returning when it's quiet? Don't judge the answers. Just notice. This exercise strengthens your capacity for depth more than any external achievement ever could. Another practice is learning to speak less but with more intention. The Stoics believed words should serve reason, not ego. Before you speak, pause. Ask yourself whether what you're about to say adds clarity or just adds sound. This doesn't mean becoming silent, it means becoming precise. When you do speak from that place, your words carry weight. They come from consideration, not impulse. And over time, you'll notice something subtle. You don't need many connections to feel understood. You understand yourself first. That changes everything. You also deepen by choosing what you consume mentally. Most people let their minds be invaded all day long. Opinions, outrage, trends, none of it filtered. Depth requires boundaries. Seneca advised limiting exposure to what unsettles the mind. Be ruthless here. Protect your inner environment the same way you protect your body. Feed your mind fewer things but better things. Read slowly. Reflect often. Return to ideas that challenge you instead of chasing novelty. This builds an inner world that is rich enough to stand on its own. And let's be honest, there will be moments when valuing depth feels lonely. That's not a flaw, that's a transition. You're shedding the habit of external noise and the silence can feel unfamiliar at first. But Stoicism never promised comfort, it promised strength. Epictetus reminded us that discomfort is often the price of freedom. Stay with it. Don't rush to fill the gap. Let the quiet teach you what your constant activity never could. Over time, that quiet becomes grounding rather than empty. You stop craving stimulation. You start trusting your own presence. A powerful exercise here is voluntary solitude. Not isolation born from resentment, but chosen withdrawal for sharpening the mind. Decide in advance when you'll step back from interaction, not as an escape, but as training. During that time, reflect on your principles. Revisit Stoic ideas. Ask how you can live them more cleanly. This builds inner coherence. And when you return to others, you return as someone centered, not scattered. You're no longer seeking depth from outside. You're bringing it with you. Valuing depth over noise also means accepting that not everyone will understand your pace, and that's fine. The Stoics taught indifference to external judgment, not because opinions do exist, but because they don't govern your character. Your task is not to be widely known, but to be inwardly aligned. Said, if it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it. That principle alone eliminates most noise. Live by it. Let it shape your choices. Let it simplify your life. In the end, the lack of friends isn't a deficit when depth is your priority. It's a byproduct of clarity. You're no longer collecting connections to avoid yourself. You're cultivating a mind that can stand alone without becoming hard. That balance, self-sufficiency without bitterness, is deeply Stoic. Keep choosing depth. Keep choosing quality of thought over quantity of interaction. Keep training your attention like it matters, because it does. What you focus on becomes who you are. And when your inner world is deep, steady, and ordered, you are never truly alone. Number 2, you refuse shallow connections. When you find yourself with fewer friends than most people seem to have, it's easy to assume something is missing in you. The Stoics would tell you the opposite. Often, it means you refuse shallow connections. You're not interested in collecting faces, names, or casual attachments that dissolve the moment they're tested. You sense, maybe instinctively, that not every interaction deserves a seat at the table of your inner life. Epictetus warned, "Be careful whom you choose to be close to." You live that warning even if you've never put it into words. You don't want noise, you want resonance, and that choice, while quiet, is powerful. You feel it when conversations skim the surface and never go deeper. Something in you pulls back, not out of arrogance, not out of fear, but out of clarity. You understand that your time, energy, and attention are finite. Reminded himself daily that life is short and easily wasted. You've absorbed that lesson. You don't want to waste your inner world on bonds that demand performance instead of presence. So you step away. You choose solitude over social clutter. That decision can feel lonely at times, but it's also deeply honest. You're saying, if it's going to exist in my life, it must be real. Refusing shallow connections means you are selective about who influences your thoughts. The Stoics believed character was contagious. Seneca wrote that the people around you shape your habits whether you notice it or not. You take that seriously. You don't want to be pulled into cycles of gossip, comparison, or emotional chaos. You protect your mind like a disciplined guardian. That's not weakness. That's self-command. And yes, it can mean fewer friends, but it also means fewer inner conflicts. You sleep better when your values aren't constantly being negotiated just to fit in. There's also courage in this refusal. It takes strength to walk away from easy belonging. Shallow connections offer quick validation, fast laughs, and temporary distraction. You see through that. You know how empty it feels afterward. So instead of numbing yourself with constant interaction, you sit with yourself. You learn your own patterns. You observe your thoughts. This is deeply Stoic. Said, "Nowhere can a man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul." You've learned how to retreat inward without running away from life. Still, refusing shallow connections doesn't mean closing your heart. It means training it. You're not cold. You're intentional. You're waiting for alignment, not perfection. You want conversations that stretch you, silence that feels comfortable, and presence that doesn't demand masks. That takes patience. And patience is one of the hardest disciplines. Epictetus taught that we must endure being misunderstood if we want to live according to reason. You may be seen as distant, reserved, or overly serious. Let them think that. Your task is not to be understood by everyone. Your task is to live well. This path does ask something of you. It asks you to take responsibility for your social life instead of blaming circumstances. The Stoics never romanticized isolation for its own sake. They valued friendship deeply, but only the kind rooted in virtue. Seneca said a true friend is someone before whom you can think aloud. Use that as your standard. Ask yourself regularly, am I avoiding shallow connections because I fear vulnerability or because I respect depth? Be honest. Stoicism is not about hiding, it's about clarity. If fear is guiding you, train courage. If values are guiding you, stand firm. Here's a practical exercise. For the next week, observe your reactions after interactions. Not the other person's behavior, but your inner state. Do you feel drained, scattered, or slightly irritated? Or do you feel steady, clear, and grounded? Write nothing else, just note the feeling. This trains awareness without judgment. Over time, patterns will appear. You'll see which connections align with your inner discipline and which quietly erode it. This isn't about cutting people off harshly. It's about choosing where you show up fully. Another exercise is to practice intentional presence. When you do engage with someone, be fully there. No performance, no mental escape. Speak less, listen more. Seneca advised, nature gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth. Let that ratio guide you. Shallow connections thrive on constant output. Depth grows in attention. Even brief interactions can carry weight when you're grounded. This practice sharpens discernment. You'll start noticing who meets you there and who can't tolerate that level of presence. Refusing shallow connections also means you're learning to be comfortable without constant social reassurance. This is a major Stoic victory. You are no longer outsourcing your self-worth. You don't need a crowd to feel real. You are building an internal anchor. Wrote that a man should stand upright without being propped up. You are learning to stand. And from that place, any connection you do allow becomes richer, not heavier. There will be moments when doubt creeps in. You'll wonder if you're missing out, if life is passing you by while others seem surrounded by people. In those moments, return to first principles. Ask yourself what kind of life you're actually trying to build. A loud one or a meaningful one? A busy one or a steady one? Stoicism teaches you to define success internally. If your days are aligned with your values, then nothing essential is missing. In time, this refusal reshapes you. You become calmer, clearer, harder to manipulate. You speak with intention because you're not used to filling silence. You listen deeply because you're not desperate to be heard. And when a genuine connection does appear, you recognize it immediately. There's no rush, no confusion, just a quiet sense of rightness. Seneca said that friendship grows slowly. You're willing to wait. So don't rush to label your lack of friends as a flaw. See it as a training ground. You are practicing discernment. You are honoring your inner world. You are refusing to dilute yourself for the sake of belonging. Keep refining this stance. Stay open but anchored. Selective, not closed. Patient, not passive. That balance is rare. And in Stoic terms, rarity often signals virtue. Number 3, you are comfortable with solitude. When you are comfortable with solitude, it doesn't mean something is missing in you. It means something has settled. Most people rush to label aloneness as a problem, as if silence were a disease and stillness a weakness. But you already know better. You can sit with yourself without scrambling for noise, without reaching for distraction, without begging the world to keep you entertained. That alone places you ahead of the restless crowd. Epictetus said, "If you seek tranquility, do less." Solitude is where less finally becomes possible. It strips away the unnecessary. It removes the constant performance. And what remains is you, unfiltered, unarmored, unafraid to meet your own mind. When you are comfortable alone, you stop outsourcing your sense of worth. You no longer measure your value by invitations, messages, or social approval. You don't need to be seen constantly to feel real. Reminded himself, nowhere can a man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul. You begin to understand that solitude is not emptiness. It is space. Space to think clearly. Space to hear your own thoughts instead of the echo of others' opinions. Space to sharpen your judgment rather than dull it through constant stimulation. And once you taste that clarity, you start protecting it fiercely. There is a quiet strength that grows in you when you stop fearing being alone. You notice it when your emotions stop swinging wildly based on who is around you. You notice it when boredom no longer terrifies you. You notice it when silence feels grounding instead of awkward. This is not isolation. This is self-sufficiency of the inner kind. Seneca wrote, "He who is contented is rich." Solitude teaches you contentment the hard way by removing the crutches. No applause, no distractions. Just you, learning to stand without leaning. You also begin to see how much of social behavior is driven by avoidance. Avoidance of discomfort, avoidance of self-reflection, avoidance of responsibility for one's own mind. When you are comfortable with solitude, you stop running from yourself. You sit still long enough to notice patterns, thoughts that repeat, emotions that flare, urges that rise and fall, and instead of reacting, you observe. This is deeply Stoic. Epictetus urged, "Do not be carried away by impressions." Solitude is where you practice that discipline. You watch impressions arrive. You let them pass. You realize you are not your thoughts, not your impulses, not even your moods. You are the one who witnesses them. Comfort with solitude also hardens you against manipulation. When you don't need constant companionship, you don't tolerate shallow connections. You don't cling, you don't chase, you don't shrink yourself to be included. You can walk away without drama because you know how to be alone. That freedom is intoxicating. It changes how you move through the world. You choose relationships instead of needing them. You engage without desperation. You listen without seeking validation. As Seneca warned, associate with people who are likely to improve you. Solitude sharpens your standards so that when you do connect, it's intentional, not compulsive. There is also a discipline hidden inside solitude. When no one is watching, excuses lose their power. You confront your habits honestly. You see where you are undisciplined, where you procrastinate, where you lie to yourself. This can be uncomfortable, even painful. But Stoicism never promised comfort, it promised clarity, said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." Solitude is where that power is trained. No audience, no shortcuts. Just repetition, patience, and self-command. If you want to deepen this comfort with solitude, start small but deliberate. Set aside time each day with no inputs. No music, no scrolling, no conversation, just sit. Breathe slowly. Let your thoughts surface without chasing them. When discomfort arises, don't escape it, stay. Notice how it peaks and fades. This is a practical exercise in resilience. You are teaching your nervous system that silence is not a threat. Another practice is written reflection. Write without an audience in mind. Don't craft, don't perform. Just unload your thoughts onto the page. This clears mental clutter and reveals what truly occupies your attention. You can also practice voluntary withdrawal, a favorite Stoic tool. Choose simplicity for a period of time. Fewer words, fewer interactions, fewer comforts, not as punishment but as training. Seneca believed in rehearsing hardship so that fortune could not shake you. Solitude is part of that rehearsal. It strengthens your independence from external conditions. You become harder to disturb because you are no longer addicted to stimulation. Over time, you'll notice something subtle shift. You stop trying to fill every quiet moment. You stop explaining yourself unnecessarily. You stop fearing pauses. Silence becomes a companion rather than an enemy. Your thoughts slow down. Your decisions become cleaner. Your emotional reactions lose their grip. This is not withdrawal from life. It is preparation for it. Stoicism was never about hiding from the world, but about meeting it from a position of inner stability. When you are comfortable with solitude, you carry your home within you. You don't feel lost when external structures fall away. You don't panic when plans collapse or people disappear. You adapt. You endure. You remain centered. As advised, be like the cliff against which the waves continually break. It stands firm and tames the fury of the water around it. Solitude turns you into that cliff, quiet, unmoved, present. So don't rush to label your lack of friends as a flaw. See it as a phase of refinement, a season of strengthening, a return to yourself. Use it, train in it. Let solitude teach you patience, self-command, and clarity. The world is loud, opinions are endless, distractions are everywhere, but you know how to sit in silence and not be consumed by it. And that, whether you realize it yet or not, is a rare and powerful advantage. Number 4, you think independently. When you think independently, it can feel like walking without a crowd to confirm each step. And yet, this is precisely where Stoicism places its quiet strength. You are not broken because your mind does not rush to borrow opinions. You are not lacking because you don't echo the noise around you. You are practicing something rare. Epictetus warned that if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. And that line cuts deep because independent thought almost always looks strange from the outside. When you think for yourself, you stop outsourcing your values. You stop asking for permission to believe what feels true after reflection. This isn't isolation for its own sake. This is discipline of the mind. This is you choosing clarity over comfort, truth over approval, and inner alignment over social reward. Independent thinking begins the moment you stop confusing consensus with wisdom. The Stoics never trusted the crowd, not because people are evil, but because people are distracted, reactive, and emotionally led. Reminded himself again and again not to be swept away by what they say or they think, because most people don't even examine their own thoughts. When you think independently, you slow things down. You pause before agreeing. You question before accepting. You feel the pull of popular opinion, and instead of surrendering, you observe it. That alone changes how you move through the world. You become less impulsive, less programmable, less shaken by trends, outrage, or approval. You begin to live from the inside out rather than the outside in. There is a quiet loneliness that sometimes comes with this, and Stoicism doesn't deny it. It teaches you to endure it without resentment. Seneca wrote that the wise person is self-sufficient, not because he rejects others, but because he is not dependent on them for his sense of direction. When you think independently, you stop using people as mirrors to tell you who you are. You develop your own internal compass. And yes, that means fewer voices agreeing with you, fewer pats on the back, fewer instant affirmations. But it also means fewer regrets, fewer moments where you look back and realize you betrayed your own judgment just to belong. Thinking independently means you examine your beliefs as if they were tools. You ask, does this serve my character? Does this align with reason? Does this strengthen my self-command? The Stoics believe that freedom begins in the mind, and a mind that cannot think for itself is not free, no matter how many people surround it. When you think independently, you stop absorbing emotional contagion. You don't automatically panic because others panic. You don't chase desires just because they're advertised as normal. You don't feel obligated to adopt opinions simply because they're loud. This is mental sovereignty. This is you reclaiming ownership of your thoughts. But this kind of independence isn't passive. It requires work, daily work. You have to notice when your thoughts are borrowed rather than chosen. You have to catch yourself repeating phrases, beliefs, or moral positions you've never personally examined. Advised himself to strip things bare, to see them for what they are, not what society paints them to be. You can do the same. A practical exercise is simple but demanding. At the end of each day, write down one belief you acted on. Then ask yourself, why do I believe this? Where did it come from? Does it stand up to reason? This isn't about self-criticism, it's about self-authorship. Independent thinking also means you stop fearing disagreement. Not because you enjoy conflict, but because your identity is no longer fragile. Epictetus taught that if someone insults you and they're right, you should thank them. And if they're wrong, there's nothing to be upset about. That mindset only works if your sense of self isn't built on external validation. When you think independently, you don't need everyone to agree with you to feel steady. You're grounded in examined principles. You're anchored in values you've tested through reason, not popularity. There's another layer to this that often goes unnoticed. Independent thinking sharpens your judgment of yourself. You stop lying to yourself to maintain a certain image. You become more honest about your weaknesses, your impulses, your inconsistencies. Seneca believed that self-examination was a daily duty, not a luxury. When you think independently, you stop defending your ego and start refining your character. You're less interested in appearing right and more committed to becoming better. That shift alone changes everything. It turns solitude into a workshop rather than a punishment. If you want to strengthen this habit, practice voluntary mental resistance. When you encounter a strong opinion, don't accept or reject it immediately. Sit with it. Argue against it in your own mind. Argue for it. See where it collapses and where it holds. This trains you to think rather than react. Another exercise is intentional silence. Not social silence, but mental silence. Spend time without consuming opinions, commentary, or analysis. Let your own thoughts surface. At first, this can feel uncomfortable, even unsettling. That's normal. You're meeting your own mind without distractions. Stay with it. Clarity comes after discomfort. Independent thinking also teaches you patience with misunderstanding. You will be misread. Your choices won't always make sense to others. Stoicism prepares you for this by reminding you that your duty is not to be understood but to be virtuous. Wrote, "I can choose not to be harmed and I won't feel harmed." That includes emotional harm from judgment. When you think independently, you stop measuring your life by applause. You measure it by integrity. You ask yourself, did I act according to reason today? Did I remain faithful to my principles? That becomes enough. Over time, this way of thinking changes how you experience connection itself. You no longer seek people to complete you or validate you. You engage from wholeness, not hunger. Stoicism doesn't reject friendship, but it rejects dependence. When your mind is your own, you can stand alone without bitterness and connect without fear. You don't cling. You don't conform. You don't disappear into the crowd. You remain yourself, steady and examined. So if you find yourself thinking differently, questioning more, standing apart more often than not, don't rush to label it as a flaw. See it as training. See it as discipline. See it as the price of inner freedom. As Epictetus said, no man is free who is not master of himself. Thinking independently is how you begin that mastery. It's not loud, it's not glamorous, but it is powerful. And it's something you can choose every single day, one examined thought at a time. Number 5, you observe more than you speak. When you have fewer people around you, something subtle begins to happen inside you. The noise thins out. The pressure to perform, to impress, to constantly react starts to dissolve. And in that quiet space, you begin to notice how much of life you were missing when you were busy filling the air with words. You start observing more than you speak. Not because you are afraid to speak, not because you lack thoughts, but because you finally understand the weight of attention. Epictetus hinted at this when he said, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we can listen twice as much as we speak." This isn't a rule meant to shrink you. It's an invitation to sharpen you. When you speak less, your mind stops racing ahead to be heard and instead settles into seeing clearly. You notice tone, rhythm, hesitation, intention. You notice yourself. And once you notice yourself, you stop leaking energy. Observation is power, but only when it's intentional. When you speak less, you give your thoughts time to ripen. You stop blurting out half-formed ideas just to feel included. You stop negotiating your worth through constant expression. Silence becomes a filter. Only what truly matters passes through. Reminded himself, be content to seem what you really are. When you observe more than you speak, you stop performing and start aligning. Your words, when they come, carry weight because they were chosen, not dumped. You feel this shift internally first. There's a steadiness that develops, a grounded patience. You are no longer rushed by the fear of being overlooked. You realize something freeing. Not everything requires your comment, your opinion, your reaction, and that restraint strengthens you. This habit of observation changes how you move through the world. You begin to see patterns instead of moments. You catch inconsistencies. You sense emotional undercurrents. You understand that most people speak to release tension, not to convey truth. And because you're not driven by that urge, you gain clarity. Seneca warned, nature has given us 1 tongue and 2 ears, that we may hear from others twice as much as we speak. The Stoics weren't praising silence for its own sake. They were pointing toward mastery. When you talk less, you listen better. When you listen better, you understand more. When you understand more, you act with precision instead of impulse. This is not passivity. This is control. You might notice discomfort at first. Silence can feel like exposure. It removes the armor of chatter. It forces you to sit with your thoughts without distraction. But that discomfort is training. Each moment you choose not to speak unnecessarily, you reclaim a small piece of discipline. You are teaching yourself that you don't need external validation to exist confidently. You don't need to fill gaps to feel relevant. This is deeply Stoic. Control what is yours, your judgments, your responses, your words, and release what is. The quieter you become externally, the more ordered your inner world grows. To practice this, start with intentional pauses. Before you speak, count silently to 3. Not to censor yourself, but to ask one simple question: is this useful, true, or necessary? Often you'll realize it's none of the 3. Let it go. Another exercise is the silent hour. Choose a fixed period where you speak only if absolutely required. During that time, observe your impulses. Notice how often you want to speak just to break silence, to assert presence, to soothe unease. Don't judge it. Just observe. Observation without judgment is the beginning of wisdom, as the Stoics understood. You'll start seeing how much energy is saved when words are not wasted. As you deepen this habit, your internal dialogue also changes. You become less reactive, less scattered. You stop rehearsing conversations in your head. You stop arguing with imagined opponents. Instead, you watch your thoughts pass like clouds. Practice this mental distance relentlessly, reminding himself that thoughts are impressions, not commands. When you observe more than you speak, both outwardly and inwardly, you regain authorship over your mind. You choose your words the same way you choose your actions, deliberately. There's another layer to this. When you speak less, you stop trying to control how others perceive you. You accept that misunderstanding is part of life. You stop over-explaining. Seneca cautioned against this when he wrote that a wise person is content with their own approval. You don't need to narrate yourself. You don't need to justify your silence. Your presence becomes enough. And paradoxically, when you stop chasing attention, attention becomes less important. You are no longer drained by social friction. You conserve your strength for what truly matters, your character. A practical way to reinforce this is through reflective writing. At the end of the day, write down moments where you spoke unnecessarily and moments where you chose silence. Not to criticize yourself, but to notice patterns. Over time, you'll see improvement. You'll notice fewer impulsive remarks, fewer regrets. Another exercise is selective speech. Commit to speaking only when you can improve the situation, clarify confusion, or express genuine intent. This forces quality over quantity. Your words become tools, not habits. You may begin to feel a quiet confidence growing. Not the loud kind that demands space, but the steady kind that commands respect without asking. This is the confidence of someone who knows they can remain silent and still be whole. The Stoics valued this deeply. They understood that self-mastery is more impressive than self-expression. When you observe more than you speak, you're practicing restraint, patience, and humility all at once. These are not weaknesses. They are strengths refined. Ultimately, this isn't about withdrawing from the world. It's about engaging with it intelligently. You're still present, still aware, still capable of speaking powerfully when the moment calls for it. But now, your silence has purpose and your speech has direction. You are no longer scattered across every conversation. You are centered, and in that centeredness you become harder to shake, harder to manipulate, harder to exhaust. This is the quiet strength the Stoics lived by. And it's available to you every time you choose to observe first and speak second. Number 6, you protect your time and energy. When you protect your time and energy, it doesn't look impressive from the outside. It doesn't announce itself. It often looks like emptiness, like fewer names on your phone, quieter evenings, long stretches where no one interrupts you. And yet this choice carries weight. It's not loneliness by accident, it's solitude by intention. You're beginning to understand something the Stoics spoke about often but few truly live by. Your life is made of moments, and moments are made of attention. Once spent, they never return. Epictetus warned, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." Protecting your time is you acting on that truth. You're no longer leaking energy into conversations, obligations, and emotional demands that leave you hollow. You're deciding that your inner world deserves guarding, not constant access by others. You start to notice how draining unnecessary interaction can be, not because people are bad, but because unfiltered access to you is expensive. Every exchange costs something: focus, patience, emotional bandwidth. When you say yes too often, you quietly say no to yourself. Stoicism asks you to reverse that reflex. Wrote, ask yourself at every moment, is this necessary? That question becomes your shield. You stop filling your days just to avoid stillness. You stop mistaking busyness for meaning. You begin to see that fewer friends doesn't mean less value. It often means higher standards for how your energy is spent. You're no longer available by default. You're available by choice. There's a calm that comes with this shift. Not the calm of having everything figured out, but the calm of no longer being pulled in 10 directions at once. You reclaim your mornings, your thoughts, your evenings. You sit with yourself longer than before, and at first it feels uncomfortable. The mind gets loud when it's no longer distracted. But the Stoics never feared this. Seneca said, "He who is everywhere is nowhere." You're learning to be somewhere again, fully present in your own life. This is not withdrawal from the world, it's alignment with it. You're conserving energy the way a disciplined person conserves strength, not out of fear, but out of respect for what it can be used to build. Protecting your time also sharpens your sense of priority. When your social circle shrinks, your values expand. You become selective not just with people, but with thoughts, habits, and impulses. You stop reacting instantly. You pause, you measure, you choose. This is deeply Stoic. Epictetus advised practicing restraint not only in action but in attention. You're doing exactly that. You're no longer obligated to entertain every message, engage every opinion, or carry every emotional weight placed in front of you. You begin to feel lighter, not because life is easier, but because you're no longer carrying what was never yours to hold. And here's the quiet truth: protecting your energy teaches you self-trust. When you stop outsourcing your sense of worth to social validation, you start building it internally. You become comfortable with your own company, and that changes everything. You're no longer chasing connection to escape yourself. You're choosing it only when it adds something real. Reminded himself, the happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. Fewer distractions mean clearer thoughts. Clearer thoughts mean steadier emotions. Steadier emotions mean a stronger you. This is not isolation. This is discipline of the soul. You may notice that your tolerance for noise drops. Gossip feels heavy. Drama feels unnecessary. Constant stimulation feels exhausting. This isn't arrogance, it's awareness. You're becoming sensitive to what drains you and what restores you. Stoicism never demanded you cut yourself off from others, only that you stop being ruled by them. By protecting your time, you reclaim authorship over your days. You decide when to engage and when to step back. That choice alone restores a sense of quiet power many people never experience. To live this way requires practice, not perfection. Start with a simple daily exercise the Stoics used, a morning intention. Before the day begins, tell yourself what deserves your energy and what doesn't. Decide in advance where you will be firm and where you will be flexible. In the evening, reflect. Ask yourself where your energy went and whether it was spent wisely. Seneca believed daily reflection was essential, saying, "Each day acquire something that will fortify you against poverty, against death, indeed against other misfortunes as well." Your reflection fortifies you against wasted time. Another practice is voluntary withdrawal. Not isolation, but intentional pauses from interaction. Sit in silence. Remove stimulation. Let your mind settle without reaching for distraction. Notice how often the urge to connect is really an urge to avoid discomfort. Observe it without judgment. This builds resilience. It teaches you that you don't need constant input to be whole. You are already enough when you are alone with your thoughts and steady in your breath. You can also practice selective availability. Before agreeing to anything, pause long enough to feel whether it aligns with your values. If it doesn't, decline without guilt. The Stoics understood that guilt is often a sign of misplaced obligation. You are not required to be everything to everyone. You are required to live in accordance with reason and virtue. Protecting your time is an act of virtue when it preserves your capacity to live well. Over time, something subtle happens. You become less reactive, less rushed, more grounded. Your energy stops spilling everywhere and starts gathering strength. You speak less but with more intention. You listen more carefully, including to yourself. You realize that the absence of constant companionship has given you something rare: space to grow, space to think, space to become. So when you look at your life and notice fewer friends, don't rush to label it as loss. Look closer. Ask what you've gained. Ask how your time feels now compared to before. Ask whether your inner world is calmer, clearer, stronger. The Stoics didn't measure a good life by how crowded it was, but by how aligned it was. You are not missing out. You are refining. You are protecting what matters most. And in doing so, you are quietly practicing one of the deepest Stoic lessons of all. Guard your inner citadel, because everything worth building begins there. Number 7, you are in a phase of inner growth. You are not broken because your circle is small. You are not behind, defective, or failing at life because there are fewer voices around you right now. From a Stoic perspective, this phase you're in is not a punishment, it's preparation. It's refinement. It's the quiet season where excess falls away and what remains is real. Wrote, "Look within. Within is the fountain of good, and it will ever bubble up if thou wilt ever dig." This is exactly what's happening to you. When friendships thin out, distractions lose their grip, and noise fades, life is inviting you inward. Not gently, but firmly. And that invitation, if you accept it, changes you. Right now, you're learning how to sit with yourself without reaching for validation, without outsourcing your sense of worth. That's not comfortable. It was never meant to be. But Stoicism never promised comfort, it promised clarity. When there are fewer people to lean on, you start noticing your own habits, your thought patterns, your impulses. You see where you've been living on autopilot. You become aware of how often you use connection to avoid stillness. Seneca warned, "We are more often frightened than hurt, and we suffer more from imagination than from reality." Solitude exposes imagination. It strips away the stories and leaves you face to face with truth. And truth, while sharp at first, is what strengthens you. This phase is sharpening your self-trust. When no one is constantly affirming you, you begin to ask better questions. Do I approve of myself today? Did I act with integrity when no one was watching? Did I govern my emotions, or did they govern me? Epictetus reminds you, no man is free who is not master of himself. Fewer friendships mean fewer emotional crutches. That forces you to build inner discipline. You start becoming someone who can stand alone without becoming hard, without becoming bitter. That balance, strength without resentment, is rare, and it's forged only in periods like this. You may feel invisible at times, but invisibility is fertile ground. When there's no audience, your actions become cleaner. You stop performing. You stop shaping yourself to be digestible. You start shaping yourself to be true. This is where values stop being ideas and start becoming habits. Stoicism teaches you to focus on what's within your control, and this season makes that lesson unavoidable. You can't control who stays. You can't control who understands you. But you can control how you respond to loneliness, how you use your time, how you train your mind. Didn't write his meditations for applause. He wrote them in solitude as a practice, as a way to keep his soul aligned. That's your invitation too. Instead of resisting this phase, lean into it deliberately. Begin with a simple daily exercise. Each morning, ask yourself what kind of person you intend to be today, regardless of who is present or absent. Not what you want to achieve, but how you want to behave. Calm, honest, disciplined, courageous. Then at night, review your day without judgment. Seneca practiced this, and he wrote about examining his conscience before sleep. Ask yourself where you acted in accordance with your values and where you didn't. No shame, no drama, just awareness. This practice alone will make you steadier than most people you'll ever meet. Use the quiet to train emotional endurance. When loneliness rises, don't immediately distract yourself. Sit with it. Observe it like a Stoic would, without labeling it as good or bad. Say to yourself, this is a sensation, not a sentence. This is a moment, not an identity. Epictetus taught that it's not events that disturb us, but our judgments about them. Loneliness is not proof of unworthiness. It's a signal that you are transitioning. Let it pass through you without resistance, and you'll notice it loses its power faster than you expect. Another practice, voluntary discomfort. Choose small, intentional challenges that strengthen your resilience, physical discipline, mental restraint, controlled silence. Not to punish yourself, but to remind yourself that you can endure more than you think. When you train yourself to be comfortable with less stimulation, less affirmation, less noise, you become unshakable when life inevitably takes things away. This is Stoic preparation, not pessimism. As Seneca said, he who has anticipated the coming of troubles takes away their power when they arrive. You're also learning discernment. When your social world shrinks, you become more selective by necessity. You begin to understand that not all connection is nourishment. Some bonds drain more than they give. This phase teaches you to value depth over proximity, alignment over familiarity. That's wisdom earned, not taught. And once you've built this inner stability, future connections will be chosen from strength, not from need. You won't cling. You won't chase. You'll meet others as a whole person, not as someone looking to be completed. There's a reason the Stoics emphasized independence of mind. They understood how fragile a life becomes when it depends too heavily on external approval. You're being trained out of that fragility now. Slowly, quietly, uncomfortably, but effectively. Each day you choose discipline over distraction, reflection over avoidance, presence over panic. You're building something solid inside you, something that doesn't disappear when people do. So don't rush this phase. Don't label it as a failure. Treat it as training. Speak to yourself with respect. Keep your standards high even when no one is watching, especially then. Remember words. If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. And this you have the power to revoke at any moment. Revoke the belief that being alone means being less. Replace it with the understanding that you are becoming more. This is inner growth. It's not loud. It doesn't announce itself. But when it's done, you'll notice the difference in how you walk, how you speak, how you choose. And most importantly, how you stand, steady, grounded, and complete, even when no one is standing beside you. Number 8, you don't seek validation from crowds. When you stop seeking validation from crowds, something quiet but powerful begins to happen inside you. At first, it can feel uncomfortable, almost like standing in an empty room where noise once lived. You notice the silence more, you notice yourself more, and that is exactly the point. The Stoics never chased applause, they questioned it. Epictetus warned, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. That line isn't about humiliation, it's about freedom. The moment you stop outsourcing your sense of worth to other people's reactions, you reclaim ownership of your inner world. You no longer wake up asking, will they approve of me today? You wake up asking, did I live according to my principles? That shift changes everything. You start to see how exhausting validation seeking really is. It keeps you performing, adjusting, editing yourself in real time. One group wants you louder, another wants you softer, one rewards conformity, another rewards rebellion. Chasing all of them is a losing game. Reminded himself, I do not concern myself with what people think of me. I concern myself with what I think of myself. Read that again slowly. This is not arrogance, this is alignment. When you no longer need a crowd to clap, you can finally hear your own thoughts without distortion. You become less reactive, less desperate to be seen, more anchored in who you are when no one is watching. A lack of friends or a smaller circle often forces this realization faster than comfort ever could. Without constant social mirrors reflecting you back to yourself, you are left alone with your standards. And that can feel brutal at first. But Stoicism teaches you that discomfort is not the enemy, avoidance is. Seneca wrote, withdraw into yourself as much as you can, not to escape the world but to refine your judgment. When validation disappears, you begin to test your values against reality instead of popularity. You ask yourself whether your actions are right, not whether they are liked. This is where real confidence is born, not the loud, performative kind, but the steady kind that doesn't need witnesses. You also stop confusing attention with connection. Crowds are noisy, but they are shallow. Approval is quick, fleeting, unreliable. One day it's there, the next day it's gone. When you detach from that cycle, you gain emotional stability. You're no longer riding the highs of praise or the lows of neglect. Epictetus was clear. If you are disturbed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. Validation only hurts when you believe you need it. Once you see it as optional, its power over you collapses. You don't harden, you simplify. You become harder to manipulate because your self-worth is no longer for sale. This is where discipline replaces approval. Instead of asking whether something will be admired, you ask whether it is correct. Instead of seeking reassurance, you build proof through action. Stoicism isn't about isolation for its own sake. It's about independence of judgment. You become your own witness, your own judge, and that requires courage. It takes strength to live without constant affirmation. It takes restraint to do the right thing when no one is there to reward you for it. But this restraint sharpens you. It strips away performative habits and leaves behind something real. To practice this, start with deliberate silence. Not just external silence, but internal restraint. For a set period each day, resist the urge to explain yourself, justify yourself, or seek reassurance. Let your actions stand on their own. Another exercise is voluntary anonymity. Do something aligned with your values and tell no one. Not later, not indirectly, no hinting. Seneca praised this kind of discipline because it trains you to act from principle, not praise. You can also practice negative visualization, imagining the loss of approval, misunderstanding, or rejection. Not to frighten yourself, but to see that you remain intact without them. Your character does not dissolve when applause disappears. Over time, you'll notice a shift. You stop performing for imaginary audiences. You speak more honestly because you're no longer managing reactions. You make decisions faster because you're not polling the room. Wrote, it never ceases to amaze me. We all love ourselves more than other people, but care more about their opinions than our own. Stoicism invites you to reverse that imbalance, to trust your reason, to respect your conscience, to stand comfortably alone when needed, without bitterness, without superiority, without fear. This doesn't make you antisocial, it makes you selective. When you do connect, it's not out of need but choice. And paradoxically, that inner independence often makes your presence calmer, heavier, more grounded. People sense when you are not trying to extract approval from them. You listen better. You react less. You are no longer negotiating your worth in every interaction. That is quiet power. So if you find yourself without a crowd, don't rush to fill the space. Use it. Let it teach you self-trust. Let it refine your standards. Let it burn away the habit of needing to be seen. As Epictetus said, first say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. No audience required. Just you, your principles, and the discipline to live by them, consistently, calmly, and without asking for permission. Number 9. You choose peace over popularity. When you choose peace over popularity, you are not failing at life. You are finally listening to it. Most people never slow down enough to hear that quiet inner signal telling them that constant social noise is draining them. You have. And that already places you closer to wisdom than you might realize. Stoicism never praised crowds or applause. It praised clarity. Wrote, if you seek tranquility, do less. Not less effort, but less unnecessary engagement, less proving, less performing. You are not here to be liked by everyone. You are here to live in alignment with yourself. Popularity demands fragments of you. Peace asks for the whole thing and gives it back stronger. You've probably noticed that chasing approval creates tension in the body, a subtle anxiety, a constant adjustment of tone, opinion, energy. Stoicism teaches you to step away from that inner negotiation. Epictetus warned, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. That includes being misunderstood, overlooked, or even forgotten by people who only valued the version of you that entertained them. When friendships depend on constant availability, emotional labor, or agreement, they are not friendships, they are contracts. You choosing peace is you refusing to sign those contracts anymore. This path requires courage because solitude exposes you to yourself. No distractions, no borrowed identities. Seneca said, we are more often frightened than hurt, and we suffer more from imagination than from reality. The fear of having fewer friends is often louder than the reality of having more space. Space to think clearly, space to act deliberately, space to recover your nervous system from constant social friction. You are not antisocial, you are selective. And selectivity is a form of self-respect. Peace over popularity means you no longer explain yourself excessively. You stop defending your quietness. You stop apologizing for declining invitations that drain you. You understand that every yes has a cost, and you finally start counting it. Stoicism asks you to focus on what is within your control, your thoughts, your actions, your values. Other people's expectations do not qualify. Reminded himself, you don't have to turn this into something. It doesn't have to upset you. That sentence alone can free you from a lifetime of unnecessary social stress. There is also strength in not being everywhere. When you reduce noise, your inner voice grows clearer. You start to notice how often people gather not out of connection, but out of avoidance, avoiding silence, avoiding self-reflection, avoiding responsibility. You are choosing the harder road, the one that builds inner order. The Stoics believed that a calm mind is not accidental, it is trained, and training requires fewer inputs, not more. This does not mean you reject humanity. It means you reject performative closeness. You value depth over frequency, substance over access. Seneca wrote, associate with people who are likely to improve you. Not many people qualify, and that's okay. You are not meant to carry the emotional weight of dozens. A small circle, or even a season of solitude, can sharpen your judgment, stabilize your emotions, and return your energy to you. Now comes the practice. Start with a daily silence ritual, 5 minutes. No phone, no music, no mental rehearsals, just sit and observe your thoughts without correcting them. This trains you to be comfortable without social stimulation. Next, practice voluntary withdrawal once a week, not avoidance, intentional absence. Notice how nothing collapses. The world continues. Your value remains intact. Then adopt negative visualization, a classic Stoic exercise. Imagine being disliked, misunderstood, alone. Sit with it. You'll realize the fear weakens when faced directly. What you resist controls you. What you face loses power. Another practice, audit your social energy. At the end of each interaction, ask yourself not how they felt, but how you feel. Energized or depleted, clear or scattered. Over time, patterns emerge. You stop needing justification. Your body already knows the truth. And finally, rehearse internal validation. When you catch yourself seeking approval, repeat Epictetus' words. If anyone tells you that a certain person speaks ill of you, do not make excuses, but answer, he was ignorant of my other faults. This trains emotional independence. You stop outsourcing your worth. Choosing peace over popularity is not withdrawal from life. It is alignment with it. You are building a mind that is not shaken by opinion, a character that does not bend for comfort, and a life that feels quiet but solid. Let others chase numbers. You are cultivating stillness. And stillness, when disciplined, becomes unshakable power. Number 10, you are preparing for a stronger version of yourself. There is a quiet truth hidden inside your loneliness, and most people miss it because they rush to label solitude as a flaw. But what if this lack of friends isn't a failure at all? What if it's a preparation phase? Once wrote, "Nowhere can a man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul." Read that again. He didn't say retreat into applause, approval, or company. He said into yourself, and that's exactly where you are right now. Life has pulled noise away from you so you can hear what actually matters. You are being stripped down, not punished. You are being shaped. When you don't have many people around, you are forced to confront yourself without distraction. No masks, no performances, no borrowed identities. And yes, that can feel uncomfortable at first. The mind rebels when it no longer has constant stimulation. But Stoicism teaches that discomfort is often the doorway to strength. Epictetus reminded us, first say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. Solitude gives you the space to answer that first question honestly. Who are you becoming when no one is watching? What values still stand when there's no audience to applaud them? These questions only emerge in silence, and silence is something your current season is generously giving you. You may notice that without friends to lean on, you begin to rely more on your own judgment. At first, that can feel heavy, even scary. But over time, something subtle changes. Your decisions become cleaner, your thinking sharper. You stop outsourcing your sense of direction. Seneca warned against this dependence when he said, "He who follows the crowd will never be followed by the crowd." Right now, you are not following anyone, and that's the point. You are learning how to stand on your own intellectual and emotional feet. This is how inner authority is built. Not through constant agreement, but through thoughtful resistance and self-trust. There is also a refining happening. When your social circle shrinks, your energy stops leaking everywhere. You become more selective, even with your thoughts. You begin to notice what drains you and what strengthens you. Stoicism isn't about isolation for the sake of it, it's about alignment. If a thing is humanly possible, said, consider it to be within your reach. The stronger version of you requires focus, discipline, and self-honesty. Those traits rarely grow in crowded rooms. They grow when you are alone with your routines, your principles, and your inner dialogue. This phase is also teaching you emotional self-regulation. When you don't have constant reassurance from others, you are forced to learn how to soothe your own mind. That is an elite skill. Most people never develop it. They distract, scroll, talk, complain, or cling. You are learning how to sit with unease without collapsing. That's power. That's resilience. This is why Stoics place such importance on mastering impressions, on not being ruled by immediate feelings. Epictetus put it plainly, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. Right now, what's happening is solitude, and how you react determines whether this becomes a wound or a weapon. You might feel behind at times, like everyone else is moving faster, connecting more, living louder. But Stoicism teaches you to measure progress internally, not socially. Your growth is not meant to be visible yet. It's subterranean, roots before branches, strength before display. A stronger version of you doesn't rush into rooms seeking validation. He walks in already complete. And that completeness is forged in moments like these, when you learn how to be enough for yourself. Here, where action matters. Use this time deliberately. Start with a daily solitude practice, even if solitude already surrounds you. Sit quietly for 10 minutes without stimulation. No phone, no music, just observe your thoughts without judgment. This is straight from Stoic reflection. Wrote his meditations not for others but for himself. You can do the same. Write one page each day answering a single question. What kind of person am I practicing to become today? Not tomorrow, not someday. Today. Train voluntary discomfort. Choose small, controlled challenges that strengthen your discipline. Wake up earlier than necessary. Sit with boredom without escaping it. Delay gratification on purpose. Seneca believed in rehearsing hardship so that life could never shock you. This isn't about punishment, it's about preparation. Every time you do something hard without applause, you are reinforcing the identity of someone who doesn't need external validation to move forward. Also, examine your standards. Solitude often raises them, even if you don't notice it yet. You stop tolerating shallow interactions, empty conversations, and performative connections. That's growth. Don't rush to replace the absence with noise. Let your standards mature alongside you. The Stoics valued quality over quantity in all things, including relationships. When the time comes, the connections you form will be deliberate, not desperate. Most importantly, shift how you speak to yourself. Your inner voice becomes louder when others are quiet. Make sure it's disciplined, not cruel. Stoicism is firm, not harsh. Correct yourself, but don't insult yourself. Remind yourself daily, this phase is not permanent, but the strength I build here will be. Say it until it settles into your bones. You are not being left behind. You are being pulled inward so you can later move outward with clarity and force. The lack of friends is not a verdict on your worth. It is an invitation to refine it. As said, the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Let this be your way. Walk it with intention. The stronger version of you is not waiting somewhere in the future. He is being built quietly, patiently, right now, in this very space you're learning to endure. And remember this, the Stoics never measured a man by the size of his circle, but by the strength of his character. If you find yourself walking alone more often than not, it may not be a flaw, it may be a sign of growth. A quieter life sharpens the mind, reveals who you truly are, and frees you from the noise that weakens most people. Stoicism teaches us that solitude is not abandonment, it is self-mastery in progress. When you no longer depend on constant company for validation, you gain something far rarer, inner stability. The few who remain in your life will be there by choice, not convenience. So don't rush to fill the silence. Use it. Build yourself in it. Because when the world finally notices your strength, you won't need to chase connection. It will come to you naturally. If this message resonated with you, take a moment to reflect, like the video, and subscribe for more Stoic lessons that build calm, confidence, and unshakable discipline. Until next time, stay grounded, stay disciplined, and walk your path with purpose. He who is not a slave to his own passions is master of his life. Epictetus. What if I told you that the biggest reason women don't fully respect you has nothing to do with your looks, money, or status, but everything to do with the boundaries you don't set? Most men are taught to be agreeable, available, and endlessly accommodating. You reply instantly. You over-explain. You tolerate disrespect just to keep the peace. And slowly, almost invisibly, you lose leverage, confidence, and self-respect. Women sense it before you do. Here's the hard truth. Respect is not demanded, chased, or negotiated. It's enforced through boundaries. The men women naturally respect aren't louder, meaner, or more dominant. They're grounded, calm, unmovable. They know when to say yes, and more importantly, when to say no without guilt or fear of losing approval. In this video, you'll learn 10 powerful boundaries rooted in Stoic wisdom that instantly shift how women see you and how you see yourself. These aren't manipulative tricks or dating hacks. These are internal rules that project strength, emotional control, and quiet authority. Watch this video till the very end because the final boundaries are the most uncomfortable, but also the most transformative. Miss them and you'll stay where you are. Master them and respect becomes automatic. Number 1, you don't tolerate disrespect, ever. There is a quiet line you draw the moment you decide that disrespect no longer has a place in your life, and once that line exists, everything changes. Not loudly, not dramatically, but deeply. You stop negotiating with behavior that diminishes you. You stop explaining why you deserve basic regard, and that internal shift is felt long before it is spoken. The Stoics understood this well. Wrote, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." Notice what he's pointing to. Not retaliation, not anger, self-command. When you refuse to tolerate disrespect, you're not trying to control others. You're controlling yourself, and that is where real respect begins. Disrespect often survives because it's tolerated in small doses. A comment brushed off, a boundary softened, a moment ignored because you didn't want tension. But each time you allow it, you train others on how to treat you, and worse, you train yourself to accept less than you should. Stoicism teaches that your dignity is non-negotiable because it comes from within. Epictetus was blunt about this. If you want to be invincible, make yourself independent of what others can take away. Disrespect only lands when you hand it permission. The moment you withdraw that permission, it loses its power. This boundary isn't about becoming cold or aggressive. It's about being immovable, calm, grounded. When disrespect shows up, you don't flinch, overreact, or plead to be understood. You simply don't engage with what violates your standards. That restraint is magnetic. People sense when you are not operating from fear of loss. Respect is drawn to certainty, not emotional volatility. And certainty comes from knowing where you stand, even if it costs you approval. Stoicism reminds you that your worth is not up for debate. Seneca said, "He who does not know how to say no will never be respected." Saying no doesn't require anger. It requires clarity. You don't need long explanations or dramatic exits. You need alignment between what you tolerate externally and what you believe internally. When those two match, your presence changes. You stop shrinking to keep peace. You stop absorbing what isn't yours to carry. And that self-respect becomes visible without you saying a word. There's also a deeper layer here. When you tolerate disrespect, it's often because you fear isolation, rejection, or misunderstanding. Stoicism challenges that fear directly. Wrote, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it." The discomfort of enforcing boundaries is temporary. The cost of abandoning them is permanent. Every time you choose short-term comfort over long-term self-respect, you weaken your own foundation. But every time you stand firm, even quietly, you reinforce who you are becoming. This boundary forces you to raise your internal standards first. You cannot demand respect from others if you don't practice it with yourself. That means no self-betrayal, no laughing at what crosses your values, no minimizing your reactions to seem easygoing. Stoicism isn't about suppressing your inner compass. It's about refining it. You learn to observe your emotions without being ruled by them, but you also learn to honor the signals they send. Disrespect registers as tension for a reason. It's your values alerting you, listen. Adopting this boundary requires daily discipline. Start with awareness. Pay attention to what makes you feel smaller, irritated, or internally conflicted. Don't judge it, just note it. That awareness alone sharpens your presence. Next, practice the pause. When something crosses the line, don't rush to react or explain. Breathe. Stoics believed in creating space between stimulus and response. That space is where your power lives. In that pause, remind yourself, I do not need to tolerate this to be accepted. Then comes action, and action doesn't have to be loud. Sometimes it's withdrawal, sometimes it's silence. Sometimes it's a firm, simple statement with no emotional charge attached. The exercise here is consistency. Boundaries only work when they are predictable. Inconsistency invites testing. Clarity shuts it down. Seneca wrote, "A man who has no self-control cannot be free." Each time you enforce this boundary, you strengthen self-control and with it, your sense of freedom. Another powerful practice is negative visualization, a core Stoic exercise. Briefly imagine what your life looks like if you continue tolerating disrespect. Feel the slow erosion of confidence. Then imagine the alternative, not praise or admiration, but internal peace, stability, alignment. Let that contrast guide your behavior. This isn't about dominance, it's about self-possession. Respect follows those who are at home within themselves. Over time, you'll notice something important. You'll stop attracting behavior that tests your limits, not because you threaten consequences, but because your energy no longer invites it. People respond to the standards you embody, not the rules you recite. When you don't tolerate disrespect, ever, you communicate that your time, attention, and presence are valuable. That alone elevates how others treat you. Remember, Stoicism never asks you to seek validation. It asks you to become worthy of your own approval. Said, be tolerant with others and strict with yourself. Being strict with yourself means refusing to abandon your values for comfort. It means choosing dignity even when it feels inconvenient, especially then. This boundary is not about controlling outcomes. It's about controlling character. Practice this daily. End each day with a short reflection. Ask yourself, where did I honor my standards today? Where did I compromise them? No guilt, no shame, just adjustment. This is how strength is built quietly, repetition by repetition. And as that strength solidifies, respect stops being something you chase. It becomes something you naturally command because it starts with how you treat yourself when no one else is watching. Number 2, you don't your decisions. There is a quiet authority that appears the moment you stop explaining yourself to death. You feel it first before anyone else notices it. Your shoulders drop, your breath slows, your words become fewer but heavier. When you don't your decisions, you communicate something deeper than logic. You signal self-trust. And nothing commands respect faster than a man who trusts his own judgment. Wrote, if it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it. Notice how much restraint is baked into that sentence. No justification, no defense, just alignment. That's the energy you're stepping into when you stop trying to convince others that your choices make sense. Often comes from a hidden place. It's not about clarity, it's about permission. It's the subtle hope that if you say enough, soften enough, justify enough, someone will approve. But Stoicism cuts straight through that impulse. Epictetus reminded us, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. In other words, stop trying to manage how you are perceived. When you explain every move, every boundary, every decision, you hand your power outward. You turn your life into a committee meeting. Respect fades when your certainty fades, and certainty disappears the moment you ask others to validate what you already decided. When you don't, you create psychological space. Space invites curiosity. Space suggests confidence. You're not hiding, you're simply not negotiating your values. This doesn't make you cold, it makes you grounded. You begin to speak from a place of decision rather than defense. Shorter sentences, fewer emotional spikes, calm delivery. That calm is felt before it is understood. Stoics believed that tranquility was proof of inner order. Seneca said, "He who is brave is free." And freedom begins when you stop being trapped by the need to be understood by everyone. There's also an emotional boundary at play here, is often emotional leakage. You give away too much inner material too fast. When you hold back, not out of fear but out of self-respect, your presence becomes more solid. You don't rush to fill silence, you let it breathe. Silence, when paired with certainty, is not awkward, it's commanding. You start to realize that most explanations are not required. Your actions, consistency, and tone already say enough. Stoicism teaches you to live in a way that needs fewer words. Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one, wrote. The same applies here. Waste no more breath explaining your decisions. Stand in them. This boundary also trains your nervous system. When you stop rehearsing anxiety. You no longer scan faces for approval. You don't rush to soften your stance. You stay regulated. That regulation is felt as confidence. You're not reactive. You're responsive, or sometimes not responsive at all. And that's important. Not every question deserves an answer. Not every challenge deserves engagement. Stoicism is selective energy management. You conserve yourself. You choose where to speak and where to remain still. That selectiveness is magnetic because it suggests depth. To adopt this habit, start with awareness. Catch yourself in the moment your voice speeds up, your sentences stack, and your reasoning spills out. Pause, breathe once, then shorten your response by half. Say what needs to be said and stop there. This is a practice, not a performance. You will feel discomfort at first. That discomfort is withdrawal from validation. Stay with it. Epictetus taught that freedom comes from desiring nothing outside your control. Other people's understanding is not in your control. Your clarity is. Another exercise is written restraint. Each morning, write one clear intention for the day, one sentence. No explanations, just a decision. Train your mind to be decisive on paper so it becomes decisive in speech. Then practice deliberate silence. Choose one interaction a day where you speak less than usual and observe the effect. Not to manipulate, but to ground yourself. Notice how your presence changes when you're not filling space with reasons. You can also rehearse non-reactivity. When questioned internally, remind yourself, I do not owe access to my reasoning. Repeat it until it feels natural. This isn't arrogance, it's self-respect. Stoics were not concerned with being liked, they were concerned with being aligned. When you are aligned, respect follows without force. Over time, this boundary reshapes how you see yourself. You stop performing intelligence and start embodying wisdom. You stop trying to be persuasive and start being firm. Your decisions become quieter but stronger, and that strength is sensed. Seneca said, "A man who suffers before it is necessary suffers more than is necessary," is a form of premature suffering. You argue battles that were never declared. You defend choices that were never attacked. Let that go. You don't need to announce your confidence. You demonstrate it by how little you need to say. When you stop, you stand taller in your own mind first. And when that happens, others feel it. Not because you demanded respect, but because you no longer asked for permission to exist as you are. Number 3, you prioritize your purpose over approval. There is a quiet shift that happens the moment you stop asking for permission to be who you are meant to be. It's not loud, it doesn't announce itself, but it changes everything. When you prioritize your purpose over approval, you step out of the exhausting cycle of trying to be liked and step into the far more powerful state of being respected. Put it simply, if it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it. Notice how there is no mention of how others might react. No concern for applause. Purpose doesn't negotiate with approval. It moves forward whether it is cheered or questioned. Most people live with their compass turned outward. They measure their choices by reactions, expressions, validation, and feedback. And slowly, without realizing it, they hand over control of their identity. You feel this when you hesitate before speaking your truth, when you adjust your actions to avoid discomfort in others, when you sense that subtle tension of wanting to be accepted more than you want to be aligned. Stoicism calls this a form of inner slavery. Epictetus warned, "If you want to be invincible, make no treaty with anything that is not in your control." Approval is never in your control. Purpose is. When you choose purpose first, you send a powerful signal without saying a word. You communicate that your life has direction, and that direction does not bend for temporary reassurance. This is not arrogance. It is self-respect in motion. Respect grows when people sense that you are guided by something internal and stable, not by emotional weather. You stop explaining yourself excessively. You stop justifying your boundaries. You stop reshaping your priorities to fit into someone else's expectations. And paradoxically, the less you seek approval, the more naturally it arrives. This boundary reshapes how you carry yourself. Your time becomes intentional. Your energy becomes guarded. You are no longer available for everything, and that scarcity isn't manufactured, it's earned. Seneca wrote, "He who is brave is free." Bravery here doesn't mean confrontation. It means choosing the long term over the immediate. It means disappointing others rather than betraying yourself. Each time you choose your purpose over approval, you reinforce an identity that does not need constant reassurance to stay steady. There will be moments when this feels uncomfortable. Purpose doesn't always feel good in the short term. Sometimes it feels lonely. Sometimes it feels misunderstood. But Stoicism teaches you to zoom out, to judge actions not by their emotional comfort but by their alignment with virtue and reason. Ask yourself regularly, is this choice moving me closer to the person I respect? Not the person others applaud, the person you can stand behind when you're alone. That question cuts through confusion like a blade. Approval seeking creates hidden contracts. You say yes when you mean no. You delay action waiting for reassurance. You dilute your standards to avoid friction. Purpose dissolves those contracts. It gives you permission to act cleanly, decisively, calmly. Reminded himself, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. Prioritizing purpose is an internal decision, repeated daily, often quietly, especially when no one is watching. To live this boundary, you must train it. Start with a daily clarity exercise. Each morning, write one sentence answering this. What must I move toward today, even if it costs me approval? Keep it simple. Don't dramatize it. Let it be grounded and practical. Then act on it without announcing it. Purpose grows stronger when it is practiced, not performed. Another practice is intentional silence. When you feel the urge to explain yourself unnecessarily, pause, breathe. Ask whether the explanation serves truth or simply seeks comfort. Often, silence is the stronger choice. Stoicism values restraint because restraint communicates confidence. Epictetus advised, be mostly silent or speak merely what is necessary. This applies not just to words, but to justifications. You do not owe the world constant explanations for your alignment. Train detachment from outcomes. Do the work, make the decision, hold the boundary, then release the reaction. This is difficult at first because the mind wants feedback. It wants reassurance that you're doing the right thing. But Stoicism teaches outcome independence. You judge yourself by effort and intention, not by response. This is how purpose becomes unshakable. This is how confidence stops being performative and starts being embodied. You'll also need to redefine respect internally. Respect is not always agreement. It's not constant validation. Often it's felt before it's expressed. When you prioritize purpose, you may notice fewer words but more weight behind them. Less attention but more gravity. That's a trade worth making. Seneca said, associate with people who are likely to improve you. Extend that idea inward. Associate your actions with values that improve you. Remind yourself regularly that approval is fleeting. It changes with mood, context, and convenience. Purpose endures, purpose compounds. Every time you choose it, you become more centered, more grounded, more precise. And that precision is felt. It creates a natural authority, not dominance, not force. Authority rooted in consistency. End each day with reflection. Ask yourself 3 questions. Where did I choose purpose today? Where did I trade it for comfort? What will I adjust tomorrow? This is a Stoic ritual of self-audit. No guilt, no shame, just honesty. Growth thrives in honest environments. When you live this way, respect is no longer something you chase. It becomes a side effect, a response to your internal order. You stop trying to be impressive and start being intentional. And that shift changes how you are perceived at every level. As wrote, waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. Prioritize your purpose. Let approval do what it wants. You have work to do. Number 4, you say no without guilt or apology. One of the most powerful shifts you will ever make is learning to say no without guilt, without explanations, without apologizing for existing. Not a harsh no, not an angry one, just a calm, grounded refusal that comes from self-respect. Most men never master this, and it quietly drains their confidence. They say yes when they mean no. They overextend. They negotiate their own boundaries in the hope of being liked. And Stoicism cuts straight through that weakness. Epictetus said it clearly. If you want to be invincible, make sure that no one can compel you to act against your will. Saying no without guilt is exactly that, invincibility from the inside out. When you say no cleanly, something subtle but powerful happens. You stop betraying yourself. Every guilty yes is a small act of self-abandonment. Over time, those betrayals pile up and people, especially women, sense it. They may not consciously articulate it, but they feel the lack of inner authority. Respect fades when you don't respect your own limits. The Stoics understood this deeply. Reminded himself, reverence yourself. Not occasionally, not when it's convenient, always. And reverence begins with honoring your time, energy, and values without needing permission. You don't owe anyone constant access to you. You don't owe endless availability. You don't owe emotional labor just because you're capable of giving it. Saying no without guilt means you've accepted a difficult truth. Not everyone will like your boundaries, and that's not your problem to solve. This is where most men stumble. They confuse kindness with compliance. But Stoicism teaches strength with benevolence, not weakness disguised as politeness. Seneca warned, "He who is everywhere is nowhere." If you are constantly saying yes, you are scattered, diluted, and predictable. When you say no with calm certainty, your presence gains weight. There is also something deeply attractive about a man who doesn't over-explain himself. Explanations often come from insecurity, not courtesy. When you rush to justify your no, you're subconsciously asking for approval. You're signaling that your decision needs to be validated. A guilt-free no says the opposite. It says, "I've thought this through. I trust myself." That trust is felt. Respect follows naturally because boundaries communicate self-worth far louder than words ever could. This doesn't mean becoming rigid or cold. Stoicism is not emotional shutdown, it's emotional mastery. You can be warm and still say no. You can be respectful without being submissive. You can be considerate without being self-sacrificing. Wrote, waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one. A good man does not overcommit and then resent it. He chooses deliberately. He declines deliberately too. Saying no without guilt also reshapes how you see yourself. Each time you do it, your nervous system learns that you are safe even without approval. That's huge. Many men are trapped in approval-seeking patterns they don't even realize are running their lives. Stoicism breaks that pattern by teaching you to anchor your worth internally. Epictetus put it simply, if you seek tranquility, do less. Fewer obligations, fewer forced agreements, fewer unnecessary yeses. Peace grows in that space. Now let's make this practical, because philosophy without action is just decoration. Start with awareness. For 1 week, notice every time you feel an urge to say yes automatically. Pause. Ask yourself one question. Do I genuinely want to do this, or am I trying to avoid discomfort? That pause alone begins rewiring you. Stoics called this the discipline of assent, choosing which impulses deserve your agreement. You don't have to act on every request just because it appears. Next, practice short, clean refusals. No long stories, no emotional cushioning. A simple no delivered calmly trains both you and the other person. Your tone matters more than your words. Say it slowly, steady voice, relaxed body. This is crucial. Respect is felt through how you carry the no, not the vocabulary you use. Advised, be tolerant with others and strict with yourself. Be strict about not. Then train discomfort on purpose. Guilt is just an emotion, not a command. Let it rise without obeying it. Sit with it. Observe it. Stoicism teaches that emotions are impressions, not orders. They pass if you don't feed them. Each time you withstand that brief discomfort, your confidence expands. You prove to yourself that you don't collapse when you choose yourself. That proof changes your posture, your presence, your energy. Another exercise, define your non-negotiables. Write down what you protect: your time, your routines, your values, your rest. If you don't define them, others will unknowingly test them. Clarity makes saying no easier because you're not improvising in the moment. You're enforcing a standard you've already chosen. Seneca believed clarity was freedom. A man who knows not to which port he sails, no wind is favorable. Know your port. As you practice this, something interesting happens. People begin to adjust. They may not always like your boundaries, but they will respect them. And those who do, their absence creates space for better dynamics. Stoicism teaches acceptance without attachment. You don't cling, you don't chase, you remain steady. That steadiness is deeply attractive because it signals emotional maturity. Most importantly, remember this: saying no without guilt is not about pushing people away. It's about standing firmly in who you are. It's about alignment. When your words, actions, and values line up, you radiate quiet confidence. You don't need to announce it. You don't need to demand respect. It's already there. So start today. Say one no that you would normally soften or avoid. Say it calmly. Say it cleanly. Let the discomfort pass. And remind yourself of words. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. That strength shows up first in moments like these. Small decisions, quiet refusals, no guilt, no apology, just self-respect practiced daily. Number 5, you don't chase attention or validation. There is a quiet power in not chasing attention, and once you feel it, you realize how much energy you wasted before trying to be seen, heard, approved of. When you stop running after validation, something fundamental shifts in you. Your posture changes. Your words slow down. Your presence becomes heavier, more grounded. Captured this perfectly when he wrote, "I have often wondered how it is that every man loves himself more than all the rest of men, but yet sets less value on his own opinion of himself than on the opinion of others." Read that slowly. When you no longer outsource your worth, you step out of that trap, and people feel it instantly. You don't chase attention because you no longer need it to confirm who you are. That neediness, even when it's subtle, always leaks through. It shows up in trying too hard to be liked, in adjusting yourself to fit the room. When you let that go, you stop performing. You start standing. Stoicism teaches you that approval is outside your control, and anything outside your control should never be the foundation of your confidence. Epictetus was blunt about this. If you want to be invincible, Make sure that no one has the power to disturb your inner peace. Chasing validation hands that power away. Refusing to chase it takes it back. When you stop seeking attention, you begin to move from inner fullness instead of inner lack. This is where respect is born, not demanded, not negotiated, felt. You are no longer scanning faces for reactions or measuring your value by responses. You speak because you mean something, not because you want something. Silence no longer scares you, it supports you. And this calm self-sufficiency is deeply grounding. People trust it instinctively, even if they can't explain why. This boundary also forces you to confront yourself honestly. Without validation as a crutch, you have to develop standards, real ones. You start asking, do I respect this choice? Instead of, will this impress someone? That shift is everything. Seneca warned about the danger of applause when he said, the approval of the crowd is the worst proof of merit. When you absorb that lesson, your life becomes cleaner. Your decisions feel less cluttered. You stop negotiating with your conscience. There is also a deep confidence that grows when you no longer feel the urge to prove yourself. Confidence isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't seek confirmation. It simply exists. And the irony is, the moment you stop chasing attention, attention often follows. Not because you're trying to attract it, but because you've become self-contained. You're not pulling energy from others anymore. You're generating it. This boundary demands discipline, though. Your mind has been trained for years to seek external signals of worth. Likes, replies, praise, interest. Breaking that habit requires daily practice. Stoicism never promised comfort, it promised freedom. And freedom always asks something from you. Start by noticing when you feel the impulse to seek reassurance. Don't judge it, observe it. Advised, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. Each time you resist that impulse, even for a moment, you strengthen that power. A simple exercise: for one full day, say nothing that is designed to impress. Speak only when your words add clarity, truth, or calm. Let go of the urge to be interesting. Focus on being centered. At the end of the day, reflect on how it felt. Uncomfortable at first, maybe, but also lighter, more honest. This is how the habit breaks. Another practice is voluntary invisibility. Choose moments where you could seek attention and deliberately don't. No announcements, no explanations, no fishing for reactions, just action. Seneca believed in training the mind through deliberate restraint because self-control is the foundation of dignity. You don't need to be seen to be solid. You don't need to be praised to be powerful. When you live this way, respect becomes a byproduct, not a goal. People sense that you are not trying to extract anything from them. That absence of need creates safety and intrigue at the same time. You are not bending. You are not grasping. You are standing firmly in your own frame, and that frame is clear, calm, and unshaken. This boundary also protects you. When you don't chase validation, you stop and overcommitting. You don't betray yourself just to stay relevant. You become harder to manipulate because your worth is not up for negotiation. As Epictetus taught, no man is free who is not master of himself. Attention addiction is a form of slavery. Freedom begins the moment you say, I am enough without this. Make this your daily reminder. You don't need to be chosen to choose yourself. You don't need approval to move forward. You don't need attention to matter. Sit with that truth. Repeat it. Act from it. Over time, it settles into your behavior, your posture, your presence. And once it does, respect is no longer something you seek. It's something that naturally meets you where you stand. This is not about withdrawal or indifference. It's about sovereignty. You are calm, open, grounded, but not dependent. You engage without clinging. You care without chasing. And that balance is rare. Stoicism wasn't designed to make you cold. It was designed to make you unshakable. When you stop chasing attention and validation, you embody that strength quietly, consistently, and unmistakably. Number 6, You walk away from manipulation or mind games. Walking away from manipulation or mind games isn't weakness. It's not avoidance. It's not fear. It's one of the clearest expressions of inner strength you can develop, and people feel it immediately, especially women. The moment you stop engaging in confusion, mixed signals, emotional tests, or subtle power plays, something shifts in how you're perceived. You're no longer reactive. You're no longer trying to win. You're no longer trying to decode every behavior. You're choosing peace over chaos, clarity over drama, self-respect over emotional gambling. And that choice speaks louder than any clever words ever could. Stoicism has always warned against giving others power over your inner state. Epictetus said it plainly: if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. Walking away from manipulation often looks foolish to those who rely on it. They expect engagement, they expect reaction, they expect you to chase clarity, validation, or emotional resolution. When you don't, when you simply disengage without bitterness or explanation, you demonstrate something rare: self-mastery. You're showing that your time, attention, and emotional energy are not up for negotiation. Respect naturally follows that. Mind games only work on people who stay seated at the table. The strongest move is standing up and leaving without flipping it over. You don't argue. You don't explain yourself into exhaustion. You don't seek fairness from someone committed to confusion. Wrote, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." That's exactly what you're doing here. You refuse to mirror manipulation with manipulation. You refuse to descend into emotional theatrics. You remain grounded, composed, and self-directed. That contrast alone elevates you. When you adopt this boundary, you also begin to trust yourself more deeply. You stop second-guessing your instincts. You stop rationalizing behavior that makes you uneasy. Stoicism teaches that your perceptions matter, but your reactions matter more. Make the best use of what is in your power and take the rest as it happens, Epictetus advised. What's in your power is whether you stay or leave, whether you engage or disengage, whether you tolerate uncertainty designed to control you. Walking away is you exercising that power cleanly, without noise. There's a quiet confidence that comes from knowing you don't need to win every interaction. You don't need closure. You don't need to prove a point. You don't need to be chosen. When manipulation appears and you remove yourself calmly, you send a message without speaking. You are not dependent. You are not easily hooked. You are not available for emotional tug-of-war. That steadiness is deeply attractive because it signals emotional adulthood. It tells the world you operate from principles, not impulses. This boundary also reshapes your internal world. You stop living in anticipation mode, waiting for the next signal, the next test, the next shift in tone. Your nervous system relaxes. Your mind clears. You regain focus on your own path. Seneca warned, "A man who suffers before it is necessary suffers more than is necessary." Mind games thrive on anticipation and anxiety. By walking away, you cut off unnecessary suffering at the root. You choose simplicity, and simplicity is strength. Adopting this habit requires discipline, not bravado. The urge to stay and figure things out can be strong. The ego wants resolution. The ego wants to be understood. But Stoicism asks you to rise above the ego's hunger. Reminded himself daily, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. Manipulation is an outside event. Your response is internal. When you walk away, you're practicing that truth in real time. This boundary also forces you to clarify your standards. You begin to define what behavior you accept and what you don't, without needing permission. You stop negotiating your values in moments of emotional tension. That consistency builds integrity. And integrity is magnetic. People may not always like it, but they respect it. Respect grows when your actions align with your inner rules, especially when no one is watching. Now let's make this practical. Start with a mental rehearsal. Stoics called this imagining challenges before they arise. Visualize moments where confusion, pressure, or emotional provocation appears. In that visualization, see yourself choosing calm disengagement. No speeches, no explanations, just clarity. This trains your nervous system to respond rather than react. Next, practice the pause. When something feels off, don't rush to interpret it. Pause for a full breath. Ask yourself one question: is engaging here aligned with my self-respect? If the answer is no, you already know what to do. Walking away doesn't require justification. It requires conviction. Another exercise is journaling with precision. At the end of the day, write one paragraph answering this. Where did I protect my peace today, and where did I compromise it? Don't judge the answer. Observe it. Awareness sharpens boundaries. Over time, you'll notice patterns, and patterns give you leverage over your own behavior. Also, train voluntary emotional restraint. Choose not to respond immediately, even when you could. Delay replies. Sit with discomfort without filling the silence. This isn't manipulation on your part, it's discipline. Seneca believed that restraint was a form of freedom. The less compelled you are to react, the freer you become. Understand this clearly. Walking away is not about control over others. It's about sovereignty over yourself. You're not trying to teach anyone a lesson. You're not trying to appear mysterious. You're simply refusing to betray your inner order for temporary emotional stimulation. That's Stoic strength in its form. Over time, this boundary changes how you move through the world. You become less reactive, more selective, more grounded. You stop chasing clarity from people who thrive on confusion. You stop investing in dynamics that require you to abandon your center. And people feel that shift. They sense that you cannot be pulled into chaos. That alone commands respect. Said, be like the rocky headland on which the waves constantly break. It stands firm and tames the fury of the water around it. Walking away from manipulation is you becoming that headland. Calm, unmoved, solid, not cold, not distant, just anchored. This boundary doesn't make you unavailable to connection. It makes you unavailable to games. And that distinction matters. The more consistently you honor it, the more your confidence becomes quiet, your presence becomes steady, and your respect becomes unavoidable. Not because you demand it, but because you live in a way that makes anything less impossible to accept. Number 7, you set clear standards for how you're treated. Setting clear standards for how you're treated is not about controlling anyone or demanding obedience. It's about deciding calmly and firmly what you will and will not accept in your life. And here's the part most people miss. Respect doesn't begin when others change their behavior. It begins the moment you stop negotiating your self-worth. You don't announce your standards loudly. You live them quietly. As said, the best revenge is not to be like your enemy. In other words, you don't react, chase, or explain yourself into exhaustion. You simply choose differently. That choice alone shifts how you're perceived. When your standards are clear, your energy changes. You're no longer trying to be liked at the cost of your peace. You're no longer tolerating subtle disrespect just to keep the connection alive. And people can feel that. Not because you're aggressive, but because you're settled. You're not hopping to be treated well. You expect it. That expectation isn't arrogance, it's alignment. Stoicism teaches that dignity is an internal posture before it ever becomes an external boundary. Epictetus put it simply, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. Translation: stop bending your standards just to avoid discomfort. Let misunderstanding happen. Let silence happen. Your self-respect is worth more than temporary approval. Clear standards start with clarity inside your own mind. If you don't know what behavior you accept, you'll accept almost anything. You'll rationalize, you'll excuse, you'll overextend. And the moment you do that, respect erodes, not because others are cruel, but because you taught them what's allowed. Stoicism asks you to take responsibility here, not blame. Ask yourself, without drama or self-judgment, what drains you, what disrespects your time, what crosses your emotional limits. Write it down. Not as rules for others, but as commitments to yourself. Reminded himself daily, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. Your standards are an expression of that power. What makes standards powerful is consistency, not intensity. You don't need speeches. You don't need ultimatums. You need follow-through. When your words and actions match, something clicks. You stop explaining why something bothers you. You simply remove yourself from what doesn't align. That calm withdrawal speaks louder than confrontation ever could. It signals that your time and energy are not endlessly available. And scarcity, when it's rooted in self-respect rather than manipulation, naturally commands respect. A key shift happens when you stop seeing boundaries as walls and start seeing them as filters. They're not there to keep people out. They're there to let the right behavior in. This mindset removes bitterness. You're not punishing anyone, you're honoring yourself. Seneca wrote, "He suffers more than necessary who suffers before it is necessary." When you tolerate poor treatment, you suffer twice. Once in the moment and again afterward when you feel disappointed in yourself. Clear standards end that cycle. They simplify your life. They reduce internal conflict, and that inner simplicity shows on the outside as confidence. You may notice resistance at first. When you change how you show up, others have to recalibrate. Some will respect you more. Some will drift away. Both outcomes are useful. Stoicism teaches acceptance without attachment. You don't cling to outcomes. You commit to principles. If someone only stays when your standards are low, their absence is not a loss. It's confirmation. Wrote, "If someone can prove me wrong and show me my mistake, I will gladly change." Notice the confidence there. He wasn't afraid of correction because his identity wasn't fragile. Build that same inner security. Let your standards be firm but flexible, grounded in values, not ego. To embody this, practice small acts of self-alignment daily. One simple exercise: pause before agreeing to anything. Give yourself a breath. Ask, does this respect my time, energy, and values? If the answer is no, practice saying less, not more. You don't owe explanations for every decision. Silence, when chosen consciously, is a boundary. Another practice: notice where you feel resentment. Resentment is often a sign you've crossed your own standards. Don't suppress it. Use it as feedback. Adjust your behavior, not your self-respect. Train yourself to be comfortable with temporary discomfort. Setting standards will feel awkward if you're used to over-accommodating. That discomfort is not danger, it's growth. Epictetus taught that freedom comes from self-mastery, not external approval. Each time you hold a standard without apologizing for it, you reinforce an identity, someone who trusts himself. And that trust is magnetic. It shows up in your posture, your tone, your decisions. You're no longer trying to manage perceptions. You're managing alignment. Remember, respect isn't demanded, it's evoked. And it's evoked when your behavior communicates consistently that you value yourself. You don't chase clarity, you embody it. You don't argue for better treatment. You move in ways that assume it. Over time, this becomes effortless. Not because people suddenly become perfect, but because you stop placing yourself in positions where disrespect thrives. End each day with a brief Stoic reflection. Ask yourself, where did I honor my standards today? Where did I compromise them? No shame, no overthinking, just awareness. Improvement follows awareness naturally. As said, waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. Set your standards. Live them. Let your presence do the talking. Number 8. You control your emotions under pressure. One of the most powerful boundaries you can ever build is emotional control under pressure, because it quietly tells the world, and especially women, that you are not governed by chaos. You are governed by principle. When pressure rises and emotions surge, most people leak their inner state through their reactions. You don't. and that difference is felt instantly. The Stoics understood this deeply. Wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." That strength isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself. It's sensed. When you remain steady while tension tries to pull you off center, you communicate something primal. You are safe in yourself. You don't need to dominate, explain, or prove. You simply stand. Emotional control is not suppression. That's an important distinction. You're not pretending you feel nothing. You're choosing not to be ruled by what you feel. There's a difference between feeling anger and being anger, between sensing frustration and acting from it. When you learn this separation, you stop being predictable. And predictability driven by emotion is what erodes respect. Epictetus warned, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. In modern terms, that means being willing to pause instead of react, even if silence feels awkward, even if restraint feels misunderstood. You stop rushing to defend your ego. You stop explaining yourself into weakness. You let your composure speak. Under pressure, your nervous system becomes your boundary. If it's untrained, you leak insecurity through tone, posture, words, and timing. If it's trained, you radiate calm authority without trying. This is why emotional regulation is attractive. It signals competence at the deepest level. You are telling others without words that stress does not control your behavior. And when a man is not controlled by his inner storms, he is trusted with influence. Respect grows naturally around him, because people feel that he won't collapse, explode, or beg when things don't go his way. Stoicism teaches you to slow the space between stimulus and response. That space is where your power lives. Most people never step into it. They react instantly, driven by impulse, habit, or fear of losing approval. You don't, you breathe, you observe, you decide. Seneca wrote, "The greatest remedy for anger is delay." Delay is not weakness. Delay is mastery. When pressure hits and you don't immediately speak, justify, or react, you reclaim authorship over your behavior. That alone sets you apart. This boundary also changes how you see yourself. When you consistently regulate your emotions, your self-respect deepens. You begin to trust yourself. You know that no matter what happens externally, you won't abandon your standards internally. That trust is magnetic. Women don't respect men who are emotionally perfect. They respect men who are emotionally disciplined. There's a quiet confidence that comes from knowing you won't say things you regret just to release tension. You won't chase relief at the cost of dignity. You won't negotiate your values just to feel better in the moment. Pressure reveals structure. When emotions run high, whatever you've built inside shows up. Stoicism asks you to build that structure deliberately. Start by practicing emotional labeling. When intensity rises, name the sensation internally without judgment. Not stories, not accusations, just sensations. This immediately creates distance. You're no longer drowning in the feeling, you're observing it. Did this repeatedly in his writings, breaking experiences down into their raw components so they lost their grip. Practice this daily, especially in small moments. Don't wait for extremes. Mastery is built in repetition. Another exercise is negative rehearsal, a core Stoic practice. Spend a few minutes imagining pressure without drama, not just calmly acknowledging that discomfort, rejection, or tension may arise. When it does, you won't be surprised. Surprise is what hijacks emotional control. Familiarity restores it. Seneca believed that rehearsing adversity makes you immune to its shock. When pressure actually arrives, you recognize it, and recognition brings calm. You also strengthen this boundary by training your breath. The breath is the fastest way to communicate safety to your nervous system. Slow, controlled breathing under stress tells your body there is no immediate threat. This isn't mystical, it's practical. A man who can regulate his breath can regulate his responses. Make it a habit to lengthen your exhale when tension appears. This simple act reinforces the identity of someone who stays grounded no matter the emotional weather. Emotional control also means letting go of the need to win every moment. You don't correct every misunderstanding. You don't chase every reaction. You don't demand immediate validation. This restraint signals abundance, not scarcity. Epictetus said, "If you wish to be invincible, make sure that no one can ever hurt you by their opinion." When pressure comes from disapproval or misunderstanding, you don't scramble to fix it. You let it pass. That composure creates respect because it shows you are not dependent on external approval to remain stable. Over time, this boundary reshapes your presence. Your words become fewer but heavier. Your silence becomes intentional, not awkward. You respond, you don't react. And people feel that difference before they understand it. Respect doesn't come from asserting dominance. It comes from demonstrating control, especially control over yourself. Women intuitively sense when a man's emotions run him, and they sense even faster when they don't. Remind yourself daily that pressure is not an enemy, it's training. Every moment of emotional restraint is a vote for the man you're becoming. You are not denying your feelings, you are refining your responses. Said, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." In modern terms, the best response to pressure is to become unshakable by it. Calm, clear, self-governed. This is not about becoming cold, it's about becoming centered. When you control your emotions under pressure, you establish a boundary that says, "I do not hand over my inner state to circumstances." And that boundary is felt as strength, maturity, and trustworthiness. Build it daily. Practice it deliberately. Let it become automatic. Because once emotional control becomes your default, respect no longer needs to be demanded. It arrives on its own. Number 9, you don't sacrifice self-respect for attraction. There's a quiet power in the moment you decide that attraction will never cost you your self-respect. Not today, not ever. Most people never make that decision consciously, and that's why they drift, bend, and negotiate with their own values whenever approval is on the line. But Stoicism draws a hard line here. Reminded himself, if it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it. Notice how absolute that sounds. No conditions, no exceptions for attraction. When you internalize this, something shifts in you. You stop chasing reactions and start commanding presence. Respect begins there. When you refuse to sacrifice self-respect, you stop performing. You no longer edit yourself to be palatable. You don't soften your convictions or exaggerate your personality to keep someone interested. And paradoxically, this is what makes you magnetic. People can feel when you're anchored to something solid inside yourself. Epictetus was blunt about this when he said, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." Translation: you must be willing to risk disapproval to stay aligned with who you are. That willingness is rare, and rarity creates value. Self-respect is not loud. It doesn't announce itself or demand recognition. It shows up in what you refuse to tolerate, what you won't explain away, and what you won't chase. When attraction becomes your priority, your standards start to erode quietly. You laugh at things that don't sit right. You agree when you don't. You tolerate behavior that drains you. Each small compromise feels harmless, but together they teach others how to treat you. Stoicism teaches that character is built in these small, private decisions. How long are you going to wait before you demand the best for yourself? Epictetus asked. That question isn't rhetorical, it's a challenge. When you choose self-respect over attraction, you also reclaim your emotional leverage. You're no longer afraid of walking away, and that changes everything. Not because you threaten to leave, but because you genuinely can. You stop negotiating from scarcity. Seneca warned against this inner poverty when he wrote, "He is most powerful who has power over himself." Emotional self-control is the backbone of respect. If your mood, confidence, or sense of worth depends on someone else's response, you've already given up the ground you're standing on. This boundary also reshapes how you communicate. You speak plainly. You don't over-explain. You don't apologize for existing or wanting what you want. You let silence do its work. Stoics understood silence as strength, not weakness. Practiced restraint constantly, reminding himself not to waste words. When you don't sacrifice self-respect, you stop filling space with nervous energy. You trust that what's meant for you doesn't require self-betrayal. There's a deeper layer here too. When you honor yourself, you invite others to rise to your level. Respect is not something you ask for, it's something your behavior makes unavoidable. And behavior is always more persuasive than intention. Stoicism is relentlessly practical in this way. It doesn't care what you claim to value. It cares what you do when it's inconvenient, especially when attraction tempts you to bend. You may notice resistance inside yourself when you start living this way. Old habits don't disappear quietly. Part of you might worry that standing firm will cost you connection. Stoicism doesn't deny that risk. It simply asks a better question. What is connection worth if it requires self-abandonment? Seneca put it cleanly. No man is free who is not master of himself. If attraction turns you into someone you don't respect, then even success feels hollow. Now, this isn't about becoming cold or distant. Self-respect doesn't mean indifference. It means intentional warmth. You choose when and how you invest. You give from abundance, not need. And that distinction is felt instantly. People respond differently to someone who chooses them rather than needs them. That choice is only possible when your identity is not up for negotiation. To live this boundary, you need practice. Start with a daily self-check. Ask yourself, did I say yes today when I meant no? Did I stay silent when I should have spoken? Did I act to be liked instead of acting to be aligned? Don't judge the answers. Observe them. Stoicism emphasizes awareness before correction. You can't change what you refuse to see. Next, practice deliberate pauses. When you feel the urge to impress, respond immediately or seek reassurance, pause for 5 seconds. Breathe. Let the impulse pass. This trains your nervous system to tolerate uncertainty without self-compromise. Epictetus taught that impulses lose their power when examined calmly. This pause is where self-respect is either reinforced or surrendered. Another exercise is value reinforcement. Write down 3 non-negotiable principles you commit to honoring regardless of attraction. Not outcomes, principles. Read them every morning. Wrote to himself constantly because he knew the mind forgets under pressure. You will too. This is how you remember. Finally, rehearse walking away mentally. Not from people, but from outcomes. Imagine choosing your dignity even if it leads to solitude. This isn't pessimism. It's Stoic preparation. Seneca believed that rehearsing loss makes you invincible to it. When you're no longer afraid of losing approval, you stop selling yourself cheaply. Here's the truth most people never hear. Attraction that requires self-disrespect is never sustainable. It might feel intense, but it erodes you from the inside. Real respect grows when you make it clear, through your actions, that you are not for sale. Not your values, not your time, not your identity. So let this boundary become part of who you are. Not as a rule you recite, but as a standard you embody. Attraction will come and go, respect stays. And when you choose self-respect consistently, you don't just become more respected by others. You become someone you can stand behind when you're alone with your thoughts. As wrote, the happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. Guard those thoughts. Guard your standards. That's the kind of confidence no one can take from you. Number 10, you let actions speak louder than words. There is a quiet authority that settles around you when you stop explaining yourself. Not announcing, not persuading, not trying to be understood at every turn. Just doing what you said you would do again and again without noise. This is where respect begins. Not in clever words, not in promises, not in emotional speeches, but in alignment. The Stoics understood this deeply. wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." That single line carries more power than 1,000 explanations. When you let your actions speak louder than your words, you stop negotiating your value. You demonstrate it. Most people talk too much because they're unsure. They over-clarify, over-justify, overshare. You don't need to do that anymore. When your behavior is consistent, your silence becomes convincing. You don't argue for respect. You behave in ways that make disrespect feel out of place. This is a boundary that doesn't require confrontation. It's not aggressive. It's grounded. And it changes how people experience you, especially women. Because respect is not triggered by words meant to impress. It's triggered by reliability, composure, and self-command. Stoicism teaches that character is revealed in action, not intention. Epictetus put it bluntly, don't explain your philosophy, embody it. When you say less and do more, you remove doubt. Doubt lives in inconsistency. Respect grows in predictability of values, not predictability of behavior. You don't need to announce your standards. Your choices reveal them. You don't need to threaten boundaries. You enforce them calmly through what you tolerate and what you don't engage with. This is where your presence starts to carry weight. Letting actions speak also means you stop reacting emotionally in the moment. You don't rush to defend yourself. You don't rush to correct every misunderstanding. You don't rush to prove your intentions. You trust time and consistency to do that work for you. Seneca warned against impulsive speech when he said, "He who is quick to believe is quick to be deceived." The same applies to speaking. Slowness creates gravity. Restraint creates intrigue. When you move deliberately, people lean in. When you explain less, people observe more. And observation is where respect forms. This boundary also forces you to become honest with yourself. You can no longer hide behind words. You can't say you value discipline while avoiding effort. You can't claim confidence while acting inconsistently. Silence exposes gaps, and that's a gift, because now your growth becomes practical, not theoretical. You start asking better questions. What do my daily actions actually communicate? What patterns am I reinforcing without realizing it? Who am I training others to believe I am through repetition? When you let actions lead, you stop chasing approval. You don't fish for reassurance. You don't seek constant feedback. You do narrate your intentions in hopes of being validated. This independence is felt immediately. It signals emotional self-sufficiency. Stoicism holds self-mastery above external praise. Reminded himself, "I do my duty, other things trouble me not." That mindset changes how you carry yourself. You act because it's right, not because it will be noticed. Ironically, that's when it's noticed most. There is also a deep confidence that grows here, one that doesn't spike or crash. You trust yourself because you've seen yourself follow through. You don't need to convince anyone of your reliability, you already know it. And when you know something internally, you don't argue for it externally. This is where boundaries become effortless. You don't explain why something isn't acceptable. You simply don't engage with what violates your standards. No speeches, no drama. Just quiet withdrawal or firm consistency. Now, this doesn't mean becoming cold or passive. It means being intentional. It means choosing when words add value and when they dilute it. Stoicism is not silence for silence's sake. It's disciplined expression. Say what needs to be said, then let behavior reinforce it. Say less, mean more. Over time, people stop testing you, not because you intimidated them, but because your actions made your limits clear. To build this boundary deliberately, start with one simple practice. Remove unnecessary explanations. Notice how often you justify your choices. Pause. Ask yourself if your actions can stand on their own. If they can, let them. This doesn't mean being rude. It means being concise. Clarity without overexposure. Strength without performance. Next, align your smallest habits with your values, not the big dramatic ones. The quiet, repetitive choices. Stoics believed excellence was built daily. Seneca wrote, "Every day we should make up our minds to be good." That goodness is not abstract, it's operational. Decide one behavior you will execute consistently, regardless of mood. Let that be your proof. Over time, consistency becomes your reputation. Another exercise: practice delayed response, not avoidance. Delay. When emotion rises, don't speak immediately. Let your actions later reflect your position. This trains emotional control and prevents reactive communication. Remember, boundaries enforced through calm behavior are stronger than those defended through heated words. Also, audit your promises. Reduce them. Keep fewer commitments and honor them completely. Words lose power when they're frequent and cheap. They gain power when they're rare and reliable. When you do speak, let it land because your actions have already established trust. Finally, remind yourself daily that respect is not negotiated, it's demonstrated. Say this internally: I don't need to explain who I am, I show it. Let that guide your behavior. Let it shape your pace, your responses, your silence. You are not here to convince. You are here to embody. When your actions speak, your boundaries become visible without confrontation. Your confidence becomes quiet but undeniable. And respect follows not because you demanded it, but because your behavior made it the only reasonable response. Before you click away, remember this: respect isn't demanded, it's demonstrated. The boundaries you learn today aren't tricks or manipulation, they're standards. And the moment you start honoring your own time, energy, and values, the world, especially women, adjusts how it treats you. Most men stay stuck because they know these ideas but never live them. Don't be that guy. Pick one boundary from this video and apply it today, just one. Watch how your confidence shifts. Watch how conversations change. Watch how respect starts to feel natural, not forced. If this video gave you even a single moment of clarity, make sure you like it. It tells the algorithm to show this message to men who need it. Subscribe if you're serious about building calm confidence, self-respect, and real attraction without chasing validation. And here's the truth most won't tell you: the men who win in life aren't louder, flashier, or more aggressive. They're grounded. They know when to say yes and, more importantly, when to walk away. Stay disciplined, stay grounded, and I'll see you in the next one.